Okay, we're ready to go.
Recording in
All right,
progress.
welcome, folks.
We are here for
Freeport Town
Council meeting 223, our second meeting of 2023. We're here in Town Council Chambers in Freeport, and present with us tonight we have Councillor Pillsbury,
Present.
Councillor Fournier,
Here.
Councillor Lawrence,
Here.
Councillor Daniele,
Here.
Councillor Bradley,
Here.
Councillor Egan,
Here.
and Chair Dan Pilch is here as well. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have some meetings from our last meeting to review, and if they're acceptable, then I'll accept a motion to waive the reading of them and accept them as printed.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor of accepting them as printed?
Aye.
Any opposed? So that carries 7-0. Next up, I have a couple of announcements that I will do my best to read without my reading glasses tonight. See if I get it right. One, Public Works would like to remind people not to park on the side of roads at this time of year, as it makes it very hard for plow trucks to get by. Second, the town is starting to work on a climate action plan for Freeport. If you want to sign up for project updates, please visit the Freeport Sustainability Board's page on the town's website and click on the Climate Action Plan tab. And last, get your dog licenses. If you don't do it by December 31st, there's a late fee of $25. January 31st, thank you. There's a late fee of $25. See how this is going to go tonight without my glasses. Thanks. So yeah, dog licenses are required, and you should do it by January 31st. Those are all the announcements I have. Does anybody else have announcements about upcoming events or otherwise? Seeing none. We got one? Councilor Bradley.
The Transportation Committee is forming and continue to discuss ideas that they're getting from all over the place. There's an excitement around it, and they will be soon back to us with a charter and with ideas about how to go forward. The same thing with the sewer. We held a meeting after the first or second meeting, and are very close to make 2 recommendations to town council about how the town and sewer could work together to the benefit of both the users of the sewer district and the downtown and the town as a whole. So I would hope by this meeting next time, those recommendations will be in front of us.
Just a reminder that our Housing Committee, which we created last fall, is finally going to be gathering. Tomorrow evening is our first meeting, just to kind of get to know each other and set out a schedule, which should generally be once a month, and start with some initial conversations that we've already been forwarding to the group once we had it formed. So anyway, just to let everybody know, the Housing Committee will start its process tomorrow.
We can move on to information exchange. So any other items of information that the councils want to exchange with each other about committees or otherwise? Good time to do it. Councillor Daniele.
The Freeport Sustainability Advisory Board, they wanted to check about appointments for us, so they do have a couple of open spots that I think they've had applications for. So I'm just throwing that out there, but they also have an EV ordinance that they are planning on bringing before us, I think. So I'm just going to introduce it briefly to you guys to be on the radar, and then I expect next meeting they will have somebody probably informally come and talk to us a little bit about it before they move it forward.
We're going to have an amendment to the consent agenda with appointments, which covers the opening on the Sustainability Committee.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Information? Yeah, Councillor Egan.
Just quickly, and I apologize for letting this drop off, but later this week I'm going to be picking up some really interesting photographs, historical photographs, from a Freeport resident who has a direct personal connection to Florida Lake and the recreation area that it used to be back in the 1950s and 60s. And had informal conversations with members of the Conservation Commission, who are the stewards of that area. And we're going to try and put up a plaque that gives the history. This resident is willing to share those photographs, and I'm going to try and work with Eric Smith to curate what a historical plaque would look like, so that we can capture some of the history. Florida Lake looks very different today than it did 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And I think it's worth showing off what was a key feature of tourist attraction in our community in the 1960s. So that's finally going to go forward, and I apologize that it's taken me this long to get to it, but it's going to happen now. Thanks.
The ordinance committee met last week to review a request to change the short-term rental ordinance to allow for larger caps. We had some good discussion, but in the end, there was not a request, or we didn't decide to move the request forward. So the ordinance stands as is, but if there's any questions on that, happy to entertain those. Anybody from the ordinance committee, which was myself, Councillor Bradley, and Councillor Pillsbury, I'm sure would be happy to answer those questions. Work on the downtown vision stuff continues to move forward. I saw Mary Davis in the audience back there, my partner in crime. We're going to come back in 2 weeks on February 7th with a small stack of 12 or 13 charters that describe each of the projects that we're moving forward, along with preliminary budgets and information about how it's going to move forward. So things are moving along nicely. Next Thursday, a week from this Thursday, is our downtown task force meeting, which is on Zoom at 6 o'clock. Anybody's welcome to that. It's a public meeting. And that's when we discuss the details of what's in the projects, how they're going, who's working on them, how much money they're requesting. So that's always a fun meeting if you want to join that. 6 o'clock on Thursday, a week from Thursday. That is, I have one more request for the council, which I'll bring up during other business to vote on, but just as a heads up. We talked about doing a council retreat to work on goals for the year. We tried to get a facilitator, not sure we'll be able to do it, but either way, I'd like to do the retreat anyway, even if it's just the 7 of us and whoever else wants to join us. So I proposed a date of January 28th, which is a Saturday, in the first half of the day, 9 to 12:30 or so. We'll find a location that's probably not here, but we'll announce that. Councillor Bradley.
I'll offer my residence as the location if it's of any interest to you.
Okay, well, if we can do that, we will. I don't know if it needs to be a public place or not, but we'll figure out the details. But thank you. So I don't want to call for a vote during information exchange, but when we get to other business, I think we need to amend the calendar, so I'll call for a vote on that date of the 28th, but just want to give you a heads up, and everybody else a heads up. Any other information exchange items?
Question?
Bradley, yeah.
You made an announcement that we're going to review the charters for the various groups. I hate to lose an opportunity to ask you what we're going to do with them, how they're going to be handled, what the process will be around that, if you know.
I know mostly, and Mary, chime in. I don't mean to kind of hog all the airtime on this because you're at my side on all this. But the idea is that the task force is going to meet next Thursday. We're reviewed as a group. The steering committee, which is 4 of us, our town engineer, town planner, myself, and Mary, will also review the charters and tweak them if we need to tweak them, and then present them with our recommendations for what we think the council should take action on. So you should get 12 or 13 charters along with some recommendations and possibly priorities.
Do you think that you will be getting, before you come to us with your recommendations, any input from, say, like Principal Group or any other I don't know, consultant or expert, or is this all coming from the group?
I'm pointing at Mary because I think you've been in touch with Russ recently. Do you want to, do you mind stepping up to grab a microphone? Thanks, Mary. Any other information exchange items? Okay, thanks, Mary. I think that brings us to the town manager's report.
Okay, Mr. Chair, thank you. I've got a couple items of business. One, I want to report, and if there's any follow-up, we probably want to have that discussion separately. If you remember, last year, we were visited, slightly over a year now, we're visited by the Coastal Waters Committee. There was an appeal of a Coastal Waters decision that went to court, and we talked with the Coastal Waters Committee, and the council at that time indicated to them that we would go ahead defending the Coastal Waters decision in court if they were comfortable with that. They indicated, yes, go ahead. That case played out over this year. Just was recently decided in favor of the town. So this was an appeal of a dock denial that happened on a property off of Lower Flying Point Road, but one of the upper reaches of the right branch of the Harriseket River there. We learned today that the applicant in that case, the one that originally brought action against the town, the appeal of the town decision, has appealed that decision to the law court. So I wanted to report that out here. We're moving ahead, assuming that the previous decision of go ahead all the way and defend the Coastal Waters decision stands. If that's something that the council wants to discuss with legal counsel or change, then we should probably do that in an executive session. I'm just reporting that out there in full transparency because those have a tendency to rack up bills. So if any counselor is uncomfortable with that, I guess we can have schedule an executive session to talk with the town attorney on it. So don't need to get into debate here about strategy or anything like that. Just wanted to update that, and also so the public is aware that that's moving forward. We are currently hiring. We have a plethora of open positions here at the town of Freeport, one of the most above average places to work in the north of Portland area, according to our employees. We have police officer opening. We have a fire rescue shift supervisor position open. We have a public works equipment operator position open. We have our sustainability coordinator position shared with the town of Yarmouth for Freeport Halftime Yarmouth is open and currently under hiring. And we also have a land use specialist, which is the position that will take a lot of our difficult land use cases from our town planner and our code enforcement officer and work with the property owner to try to resolve those complex cases requiring a lot of time and working with the property owners and things like that. So that's a lot of positions. I wouldn't say we're critically understaffed in any one of those areas, but police department's getting a little bit thin, and they are nervous, as they have been for years now, about the lack of applicants. So I'll just say if anybody is interested in any of those positions, you can reach out to Judy in my office, or you can look on the town's website. Under employment opportunities, there is a tab under departments, employment opportunities, and it has all of these jobs listed, the requirements, and how to apply.
Did we hire the social services liaison?
We have a finalist for the position.
Great.
It's not locked down, but we're talking with somebody. So it's, I'm not able to announce that yet, but there were several fantastic candidates for that position. So we're happy about that, and it looks like that may be a pretty short-term hire now and startup process. So got my fingers crossed on that one, and I think they're pretty excited about getting somebody into that position to try to assist with some of the cases. So pretty exciting there. And I also want to report out, I hope there's not anyone in the audience, but we had a long discussion at the last meeting about a potential easement for the property next door over the current property. There were a lot of questions, concerns, and people have been emailing us. We said it was going to be on tonight's agenda, but the other party was actually traveling and is just flying in right now, so figured probably best to put it on the next agenda when he wasn't at the baggage carousel trying to, fight for his bags and trying to Zoom us at the same time. So that is currently scheduled to be on the February 7th, I believe, agenda, the first Tuesday in February. So I know there were a lot of people that were following that in the public. Just want to let them know that that hasn't disappeared. It wasn't nothing secret about where it is. It's next 2 Tuesdays from now. There would be three Tuesdays. The first Tuesday in February.
February
whenever that
7th.
is. Yep, February 7th. So that's all I got, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the manager? Okay, brings us to our 6th order of business, which is our public comment period, which comes with a couple of rules. But this is the time when the public gets to come up and address the council on items that are not already on our agenda. So on the off chance somebody here is planning to talk about Hedgehog Mountain, this is not the time to do it yet, but it will be very soon. This is the time to talk about anything else that's not on our agenda. And if you do have something to say, we ask you to come up to the podium, or there are a couple of handheld mics if you prefer that. But that'll help you be seen and heard online. Everybody gets up to 3 minutes. It's not a time to debate or ask questions of the council. It's more just to make statements. So that's what this is for. The same rules are going to apply for the public hearing when we do get to Hedgehog Mountain in a few minutes. So, does anybody have anything that's not related to Hedgehog Mountain or other agenda items that they want to talk about tonight? Is there anyone on Zoom? Good question.
There are, but when I checked, it was, well, we've got one member of the press and one attendee. So
Okay.
no hands. If you're, let me put my mic on. If you are joining us on Zoom at any time, if you would like to participate, if we're at a point where we'll take participation, please use the raise hand feature that comes to me sitting right here, and I let the chair know that there's somebody who'd like to chime in over Zoom. So thank you.
Okay, moving along then. We're get to our seventh order of business, which is where we do all the things that we need to vote on. The first of which is a consent agenda, which has a couple of more ordinary things on it. Tonight we have a list of a lot of donations to the library, which is fantastic. And are we going to add something to the consent agenda?
That's right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe before we officially move the consent agenda, I'd like to propose an amendment that the Appointments Committee add 3 names for appointments to the consent agenda. We had a meeting before this council meeting started, and we'll have some names going forward, so we'd like to add those.
Sure. Do you want to go ahead and read those in?
Okay. So I'd like to be it ordered that the January 17th, 2023 consent agenda be amended to include recommendations of candidates for open positions as identified by the Appointments Committee, and that it be adopted.
Do you want to read the names?
I can do that. The names that the Appointments Committee are recommending move forward: for the Library Board of Trustees, Steve Thomas; for the Sustainability Committee, Bob Stevens; and for the Board of Assessment Review, Andy Arsenault. So that we can add those names to the rest of the items that are listed on the consent agenda.
Got it. Is there a second for the amendment?
Second.
Any discussion? Yeah, Mr. Council Bradley?
Yeah, I know that we don't ordinarily go through the consent agreement piece by piece, but I looked at the donations to the Freeport Community Library, and I was really impressed. I mean, there's over 80 donations to the Freeport Library, and in a small town like this, that's just spectacular. So congratulations to the library and everybody who donated, and thank you from the council for that support.
Any other discussion on the amendment to add the names to the consent agenda? All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
That's everybody. So any other reason to separate out items from, on the consent agenda from each other rather than voting it on it as a whole? Seeing none. Councilor Pillsbury, can I ask you to read the motion for the consent agenda?
Be it ordered that the January 17th, 2023 consent agenda be adopted as amended.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Lawrence. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Councilor Bradley, you were in on that one, yes?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So that passes 7-0. So next up is item 923. To consider action relative to review and comment of the Hedgehog Mountain Management Plan update as recommended by the Conservation Commission. And we have a public hearing on this. So just a bit of background on this. The town owns the Hedgehog Mountain property. The town, by ordinance, delegates the management of that property to our Conservation Commission, which is a group of 7 volunteers that are appointed similar to how we just appointed volunteers to other committees. In the ordinance, it says that they are required to come up with a management plan that they vote on by, I think, a 2/3 majority and recommend to the council, and the council accepts it, and then that becomes the management plan for Hedgehog Mountain. Our management plan is a little overdue, so they have been hard at work for the better part of a year. They started the process, I think, in December last year. I don't want to steal your thunder, but, and have been looking at all different parts of the property. So they've finished that work, and they've come forward and are recommending a plan to us tonight. So what we're looking at tonight is the management plan and whether or not we're ready to adopt the management plan. The management plan has impacts on what we can do with the property, including whether or not mountain bike trails can be built, where they can be built, and things like that. We are not voting on mountain bike trails tonight. We're not voting on saying, yes, start building trails tomorrow or not. What we're voting on potentially is the plan itself. We could vote on the plan. We could decide to table voting on the plan if we're not ready to vote on the plan, but that's what's on our agenda for tonight. Before we do that, there's a public hearing where everybody in the public gets to comment on the plan. Before we do that, we've invited the Conservation Commission to come and present the plan to us so we know what it is we're talking about. There should be copies of the plan on the table in the back if you don't have one. They're online if you're watching online. So, Margaret, do you want to start getting ready while I kind of wrap up my little intro here? I think that kind of does wrap up my intro. So Margaret's from the Conservation Commission. She's one of the seven, and I see a lot of other members of the Conservation Commission here as well.
All righty.
All right, super. Thanks. Welcome, Margaret.
Thanks. My name's Margaret Gerber. I'm a member of the Conservation Commission, and I'll be walking you through kind of an overview of the management plan update process, though Dan covered it pretty well, so I'll breeze through that. And then I'm going to update and highlight some of the changes in the plan. That's good. That's fine. So just to start with some background on the property and the management plan process. As Dan noted, Hedgehog Mountain is 196 acres, owned by the town of Freeport. It was conserved at 2 different times, the first 100 acres in 1989 by town of Freeport voter referendum, and the remaining 96 acres were purchased in 2001. And as we all know, as many of us, if not all of us, have been to the property, it's a significant natural resource for the town of Freeport. It's less than a mile from downtown. It features the highest point of land at a towering 308 feet. There are over 5 miles of trails enjoyed year-round by walkers, runners, hikers, mountain bikers, and it's also open to horse riders and snowmobilers. So it really has been used, and I think the intent from the existing plan is to be used by everyone. It also is quite ecologically and naturally relevant as a fairly large undeveloped, undeveloped space in an increasingly developed part of the state. And Dan already mentioned the Conservation Commission and that we're comprised of 7 hardworking volunteers. So we'll get right to the management plan. The existing management plan first found its beginnings when the town council appointed a Hedgehog Mountain Planning Committee in 1992. That group was tasked with coming up with the first management plan and meeting with stakeholders, both locally and from around the state, as well as conducting field surveys. And that plan took into consideration the background of the property, a description of the natural and cultural resources, and future management actions. So the last revision of the plan, the existing plan, which is how I'll refer to it throughout this presentation, is, thank you. How many minds does it take to put up a slideshow? The existing plan was approved by Town Council in September 2004. So as Dan noted, it's been a little bit of time. But the Conservation Commission is getting on the ordinance to update it every 5 years and is coming in a little late. But the work began on this update about a year ago, a little over a year ago at this point. And the purpose of the update is to really reflect the current conditions of the property, its uses, and any considerations. So we tried to our best degree, keep the original intent of the existing management plan, but make sure it reflects the property as it's used today. So you can go to the next slide, I believe. So a few things I'm going to highlight for you tonight are some of the changes and new aspects to the plan. Again, we really weren't trying to drastically change the plan. We just wanted to highlight a couple areas, such as defining the summit area of the property, which the existing plan refers to, but doesn't explicitly define past the forested area around the summit. But in the existing plan, it still has implications on where mountain biking and other activities can take place. So that was one of the main considerations we wanted to address and be really explicit about. We also, in turn with defining the summit area, wanted to define where mountain bikes, horses, and snowmobiles were allowed on existing trails, because the existing plan, again, notes they're allowed on designated trails, but doesn't actually designate what those trails are. We also wanted to highlight management threats and actions, such as climate change, limited capacity, invasive plants and pests, and development pressure. And of course, as it's been about 20 years, we thought we'd take a look at the management actions because some of those might have changed as well. So you can go to the next slide, and I'll expand a bit on those areas mentioned. Perfect. So we'll start with the summit area designation, as this, as Dan mentioned, can have kind of the most impact on management considerations moving forward. Again, the existing plan defines summit area very loosely or not at all, by saying forested area around the summit. And one of the major factors that came into play when the Conservation Commission was trying to define this area was the topography and the soils, as well as the plants found there. You can see here on this map that right about here is the summit of Hedgehog. Sorry if I'm blocking people. And very distinctly, there's this swath of soil. And the trail to get to the summit follows it quite perfectly. So it's very definable looking at the topography and the soils, which is why the Conservation Commission is designating it as 180 feet above sea level, which is this line right here, up to the summit. So it's a very clear designation based on the factors on the ground. And because soils play such a big role in this designation, I'm going to go into those a little bit deeper in case anyone needs a refresher on kind of middle school science. But I think it's worth noting that the existing plan also talks about the soils, which are quite thin. At the time the original plan was written, there were 14 inches or less on most of the summit. It's even less than that today, just from natural processes of rain and natural erosion, given the slopes are pretty steep. So today it's more like 6 inches in most places, exposed bedrock in others. So that's discussed in the existing management plan, which is why it has a designation of no mountain biking on the summit trail or the forested area. So we took a closer look at that. And if you want to go to the next slide. Perfect. We took a closer look at the soils. So I'm just going to give a quick reminder of soils and the role they play in the forest, because I think this is a really important point and a really important part of the management plan in considering future uses. So our soils, what role do they play in the forest? Well, they provide nutrients, store water, and provide the actual structure and substrate that trees and plants grow in. Soils are also very important because they store more carbon on land than their above ground counterparts of trees and plants. about 3 times more. So thinking of climate change and carbon storage, soils are vitally important. Soils on the summit area, you saw on the previous map, are Paulus rocky soils, known by the USDA to be highly erodible, especially when the slopes tend to be quite steep, and these ones are 8 to 20%, so that is considered steep. As I mentioned, they're extremely thin, and yet surprisingly, the tallest canopy cover on the entire property is found on the summit. And we believe this to be because when it was actively being timber harvested by previous owners, those steep slopes made it difficult to get equipment up there. And so trees continued to grow and therefore ended up being much taller than elsewhere on the property. And of course, the reason those trees are growing there in such thin soils is because they've gone out instead of down, because there isn't really anywhere to go down. And a general rule of thumb is that trees' root system is about as large as its canopy. So if you're thinking of, the tall red oaks that are growing on the summit of Hedgehog that have a 30, 40-foot canopy, that's how extensive the root system is. And for folks who have been up there, it's a pretty heavily forested summit area, so there are a lot of intricate root systems that are interlocking up there. So the soils are vitally important and being eroded through natural processes, and you can see in areas where there have been human impacts that soil has been eroded further as well. And erosion leads to decreased productivity in the forest, decreasing the water being stored, nutrients, and runoff into Merrill Brook and eventually Casco Bay. So all part of the wonderful system that we all learned about in middle school. You can move on. End of the soil lesson. So, to summarize and add to a few more reasons why the Conservation Commission reached this designation, aside from the thin and highly erodible soils, there's also a Conservation Commission ordinance that prohibits us from activities detrimental to drainage, erosion control, or soil conservation, and requires that the commission keep its property predominantly in its natural, scenic, or open condition. So that's another factor of why this designation is what it is and is noted as that in the existing management plan. So that's not something new. The existing plan notes a number of plants, however, that were found on the summit area about 20 years ago, some of which were uncommon and rare. So we launched a botanical survey of that area again in 2022 to see if those plants were still there or if they weren't. And leatherwood, which is noted in the existing plan, is still there. 20 years ago it was considered uncommon. It's not today. That shows how quickly designations can change between plant populations, but it is not considered uncommon by the state anymore. However, a few botanists that did these surveys noted that the population size, which is pretty significant out there, is uncommon in the state of Maine. You don't see that in many places. So while the plant itself is common, the amount of plants found there is uncommon. And in addition, an uncommon sedge was also identified. Not the back sedge, which is noted in the existing management plan, but the broad, loose, flowered sedge. So, those are the factors that led to the Conservation Commission designating the summit area as 180 feet and above, and that's only found around the summit area on the property. And because of that designation, we use that to help define the trail designations. So you can see here we list out what those are, and it's really only the Summit Trail and the Stonewall Trail, which fall within that 180-foot summit area designation, where foot traffic only is allowed. And again, that's to limit the impact on the property and on those highly erodible soils. But we designate on the other trails if they're suitable for mountain biking, horseback riding, cross-country skiing, and a few of them are designated for snowmobiling as well. And those are the old woods roads that are much wider. So Sewell Road and Reed Road. But we do note, since those are coming from privately owned properties, that folks using those need to have the permission of the landowner that they'd be entering from. But that leaves those trails open for snowmobile club connections. Can move forward. So I wanted to also highlight management threats and challenges. This is something that is noted in some terms in the existing plan, but it isn't called out as clearly. And because of the many threats and challenges to managing property, we wanted to really highlight this in the new plan. So some of the aspects that are highlighted are climate change. As we know, Maine and the rest of the world has experienced the impacts, and that's leading to drier and warmer summers and weather, followed by really intense events of heavy precipitation and rainfall. So on a property like Hedgehog with erodible soils, it's definitely noteworthy, but it is also a unique property, being the highest elevation in the town of Freeport, that provides really interesting room and opportunity for plants and animals to adapt to the impacts of climate change over a greater open space and degree of elevation than found in other places. And with climate change also comes an increase in invasive plants and pests as the temperatures get warmer and we have fewer colder, wet winters that kill invasive plants and pests that have been working their way steadily into Maine. A few notable ones are brown-tail moth and hemlock woolly adelgid. Both of their host plants are found on the property, so their increased presence can lead to mortality of those trees and impacts on the property. And invasive plants. This is a lovely picture of an invasive bittersweet vine, which is up near the summit of Hedgehog, just working its way around a tree. The plan notes that given its size, there are amazingly few invasive plants on the property right now, and the best way to keep it that way is to stay on top of it and remove them when you find them. The plan also, however, notes that there is limited capacity for intensive management, given we are an all-volunteer commission, and this is actually noted as a concern in the 2011 open space plan and comprehensive plan of the towns, and I imagine is probably going to factor into the updated plan as well. And of course, development pressure. That's something that's highlighted and really makes this property stand out as an undeveloped place in Freeport where the cultural, natural, and ecological and recreational uses can continue. Not only is the population of Freeport and the surrounding areas increasing, but that means increased use of the property and the trails. As part of the update process, the commission talked to the local game warden and a wildlife biologist from the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife who came out to the property, said, wow, look at all this open understory, and really highlighted the importance of large undeveloped parcels, including Hedgehog, in southern Maine for hunting because so many places are closing and being fragmented. So for hunting purposes and that cultural tradition, but also for the sake of wildlife movement and breeding and wildlife management, it's very important. So to kind of summarize briefly, while updating this plan, the commission very much wanted to keep the original intent of the existing plan in mind and really pay attention to the balance between public access and trails and the undeveloped areas for wildlife and plant communities, which is very clear in the existing plan, and to be able to balance so many uses for so many community members is really vital as well. So there's one more slide that shows the updated management actions, and a number of these are the same, but some notable ones are really establishing a comprehensive signage system. Even people who have been out there many times remark that it's easy to get turned around or wonder where exactly you are. So we really want to update that, as well as update and provide better information around hunting season, such as when it's taking place, having signage up, leaving blaze orange vests, and really encouraging people to know that's happening, but also encouraging people to know that that's a use that's allowed on the property. And then we updated a number of the management actions to reflect the management challenges and threats, to really pay attention to invasive plants, maintain trails for safe use, and to correct and minimize erosion potential, as that's already currently happening on a few of the trails. Maintaining the natural character of the summit and the views that it affords, that hasn't changed. Preserving the ecological, historic, and archaeological features of the property, that's also remained the same. So most of the other ones have remained the same as well. So I won't take many more time. I'm sure we have some comments that people want to make. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I will cede the floor.
Thank you, Margaret, and thanks to the Conservation Commission. I know that 7 of you, not all of you, are here, but if you are here, would you mind standing up? Because I think it's worth noting that the 4 of you that are here and the 3 that are not do a tremendous amount of work, not only in the management plan, but like all the work you do before you were asked to revisit this is maintaining trails, building bridges, carrying logs in and out of the woods, and it's a ton of work. I was really impressed when I learned more about what you did, so it's worth recognizing that on behalf of the town, that you do all this and you don't get paid for it, so thank you. After that, what I propose, sort of like we usually do, is we'll open the public comment, hear from the public, and then we'll get a chance to ask questions to Margaret or the Conservation Commission or any members of the public that we have questions for. So with that, Councilor Fournier, do you want to open the public hearing for us?
Certainly. Motion to open public hearing?
Second?
Thank you, Councilor Lawrence. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we now have a public hearing, same rules as before. If you want to say something, come up to the podium or ask someone to pass you one of those handheld mics. Say who you are, where you live, and what you think about Hedgehog Mountain Management Plan. So who wants to start?
I'm not getting up, I'm just getting up.
All right, do you want somebody to pass you? Okay.
John, I'll get your mic if you want.
Oh, I'm okay.
Okay.
Anybody else needs this stuff down as well?
Thank you. Very good. I appreciate all the work you folks have done. My name is John Lowe. I live on Ledgewood Lane, and that's up in North Freeport, actually, but not too far from Florida Lake. And over the years, I've spent many a time at Hedgehog Mountain and that whole area. And it's a great, beautiful spot. And I think the council should accept this plan that these people have done pretty much as it is. It's a pristine spot, and there's places there people can mountain bike, people can, in certain areas. I get concerned about building trails or mountain biking trails and such with the topography of the soils and all of that, and I don't know if that can happen or not. I would like to keep it as natural as we can. I get concerned with all the new fat bikes and all of these things and don't know what these do to the topography of the trails and so forth. But I hope we keep it as much as we can as it is. There is access from like the Hunter Road fields through the trails over to here, because I see an item in here where it says they're concerned about having parking from the Hunter Road. I don't think at this point there's been any talk of actually putting a road through or anything from the Hunter Road fields over to this, but you can access it by going through the trails. The other thing that I think is probably one of the biggest things is we have to figure some money for the Hedgehog Mountain. And whether this comes under Parks and Recreation from the towns, but it's time that we started, if we're going to have all of these nice properties, and we have a lot of them in Freeport with the Hedgehog Mountain, the Florida Lake, the Gorman Parks, and all of our trails that we really need to think in the long run of how we're going to get some money and fund these. You can't expect all of this work to be done by volunteers. So that was the thing I had there. Let me see if I had anything else. Is this program that you showed today, is this on the town website like you had it?
It is, yeah, and there's copies on the table as well, but it is on the town.
Well, I had a copy I got from the,
Presentation?
yeah, the presentation.
It's not yet, because we just got it tonight, but it could be.
I would
If
think
you
it
email
would
a
be.
copy,
I mean,
we'll
I
take it.
have the, and one thing I was concerned about, which I got the original Hedgehog plan, and I was hoping that we would have this one showing the differences, but because I guess it's a commission and not an actual ordinance, that couldn't be done, is from what I understood. But my chief things are, let's keep it pristine. Let's, if we can do other things with it, maybe some sorts of mountain biking or something in certain parts of it, but Let's keep it like it is. It's beautiful up there, and I've walked that many a time. So please preserve our Freeport. Money isn't always everything. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? A room full of people, I gather many of you are eager to talk.
I'm going to kind of nudge my way to the front of the line because I have a 5 and a 6-year-old here, and I don't know when they'll expire. Hi, my name is Matt Warner. I have met many of you, which I'm grateful for. I am the president of Greater Portland NEMBA. NEMBA is the New England Mountain Bike Association. And we're obviously here because we have been promoting a proposal we put together about 2 years ago now for a trail system at Hedgehog Mountain. And I will just give you, I don't want to bore any of you to death, so I'll just give you a brief overview of what the system looks like, and I'd be happy to provide more information after the meeting, of course. So we were approached by the town actually originally and asked to put together a proposal for Hedgehog, again, about 2 years ago. What we came up with was a 6.3-mile trail system that involves 2 easy climb trails up to the summit of Hedgehog. The summit, of course, is not the rocky overlook where you have these beautiful views of the White Mountains. The summit is a couple hundred feet away from that. And then from this summit point, we have 3 to 4 downhill trails for all levels and abilities coming down. These are designed with mountain bikes in mind, but they are specifically intended to be multi-use. We've been working closely with a variety of user groups, including the local Trail Running Association and other groups like that as well. What we designed is very expensive, which is daunting for me and some others in this room, I know. But the reason we designed it to be so expensive is because we anticipated what some of these concerns would be for the property, and we share those concerns, specifically with respect to erosion. We also wanted a trail system that would be top-notch, one of the best in the state, and would attract people from many dozens of miles around to Freeport, because that was the whole reason the town approached us in the first place and asked for our input. So what we've designed proposes a really neat series of trails that progress from entry level, a kid who learned to ride a bike yesterday could have fun on them, to advanced, where pretty much any level of mountain biker will enjoy it and have a good time. We'd be happy to show you, in some of our promotional materials, which we've previously circulated to you, we have pictures of what this would look like. We have examples of other similar trail systems. And at the end of the day, if this is something the town wants here, we're confident it would bring in a lot of people. So I would just say that we share, again, the concerns of the Conservation Commission, and our proposal really, in most respects, is consistent with the plan for Hedgehog Mountain that you've been presented. The way we would build these trails with Main Trail Builders, a top-notch professional firm based in Portland but recognized regionally, is building them with a machine with a narrow width that essentially digs down a bit, packs the dirt back in, and negates any risk of erosion on the surrounding trail. The trail is the trail. The land around it would be untouched. That's the benefit of building professionally built trails like this. They would be built specifically to avoid runoff or moisture issues, and they would be built in a way that we would prevent users from accessing or having any interest in accessing the property off the trail system. So at the end of the day, I think what the difference between our proposal and the management plan in front of you is really just one thing, and it's that our proposal would bring a ton of people into this property. It would be a destination for mountain bikers, but also runners, people just interested in a good trail experience. And the plan in front of you, I think, is intended for very legitimate reasons to keep the property pristine and quiet. And I think this is just a policy decision for the council. As you know, there's a lot of support in the community for what we are proposing. We've been tremendously successful fundraising for this so far because there's so much support from Freeport area businesses and residents. And we are confident we could raise the rest of the $500,000 with the approval of this body. To get there, we'd be happy to work with the commission as we go, flagging out the trails to make sure that we avoid any ecology, especially, or plant life that is is important to the town. We can, build trails around the particular trees and shrubs that are of utmost concern to the commission. So I would just say that there are ways to build this trail system in a manner that avoids erosion on the property, even with the soil types and topography on the mountaintop, that avoids damage to the ecology, but you will have a lot of people on this property. And again, that's just a choice for this body and for the town. So we hope we can keep working with you and your business community to make this happen. And we appreciate all the time all of you put into this, which I guarantee is less time than I have so far. I'm happy to answer questions, but I just appreciate a few minutes.
Yeah, can I ask you a question before you go and deal with your expiring children?
Please.
I
wouldn't call them that, but.
That's probably poor chicks at worst. The crux of, I think, a lot of the discussion is around the management plan says that mountain bikes and horseback riding, I think, are not permitted in the summit area, and they define the summit area to be 180 feet and above. And I think from a letter that you had sent in earlier, you basically said without access to the summit, there's really no point in building the mountain bike trails because it wouldn't be destination worthy. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah, I have 2 points there. First, to answer your immediate question, the proposal simply doesn't make sense without the mountain. It's not us trying to be ornery or stubborn. It's just this is what brings people to trail systems. And if it's another flat trail system, it's not going to bring people in. We're not going to be able to raise the money for it, and it's not going to have the desired effect for the town. The other point I just want to make is this is a misconception we deal with a lot. Mountain bikes don't cause more erosion than other types of trail users. There have been studies on this, a lot of studies, and they, across the board, find that mountain bikes have the same or less effect on erosion on trails. So to group mountain bikes in with horseback riders, for example, or ATVs, just isn't backed up by data or science. Again, the issue here with erosion and trail use is going to be, you're just going to have a lot more users, period. It's not the type of user you're going to have. And then the last point I'd make on that is on the mountain itself, the current trails are very eroded. And that's just because I completely agree that no matter what you decide, the Conservation Commission should get more money. I hope there's money in the town budget for that, and they can spend more time, and they can use that money to fix up these trails. But the current trails, pedestrian only on the mountain, are incredibly eroded. It's because of the way they were designed and the fact that they're fall line trails with plenty of wet spots. When people come up on wet spots, they walk around them. That makes the trail wider. That makes the erosion problems worse. Our trails wouldn't be like that because we specifically designed them to avoid that. We'd also be happy, as we've done in other towns like Falmouth and elsewhere, have volunteer days to fix up the pedestrian-only trails, which would remain pedestrian-only.
Thanks, that's helpful. Any other questions for Mr. Warner?
You're going to go to the end and then have questions, or going to each
We
guy?
could do either way, if you have, I just know that he may wind up having to leave because of his kids, that's why I was
I'm
asking.
going to try to stick around, but no promises.
Okay.
So my take on this is that there are two very legitimate points of view being expressed, and we're being asked to pick. And I'll speak for myself. I don't have a clue how to decide whether what you say about erosion is right or whether what the Conservation Society says about erosion is right. You've suggested that, your mountain bikes will have less impact or no worse impact than a pedestrian, but you just have more of them. Does that mean that mountain bike use of this will cause more erosion than would occur despite your construction design? Than would occur if just pedestrian use was limited, if that's the summit area was just limited to pedestrian use?
No. What it means is you'll have 4 miles more of trail on the summit area than you currently have. Those trails won't lead to more erosion, but there will be trails where there's currently woodlands.
Okay. So in a situation, so there's really a conflict here of opinion about what the impact of allowing mountain biking in the summit area will do to the environmental quality of the area. You say one thing and the Conservation Commission says another, and obviously there's an instinct on a council to listen to its commission. I mean, it's natural. But in a situation like this, in my experience, it would come down to somebody who knew more about this than me making a decision about this, and come down to somebody who didn't have a vested interest in it either way, providing an opinion for us. Do you think that would make sense for us to to find an expert in trail construction or environmental impact of mountain biking on summit areas like this to advise us with respect to which of these two points of view make sense?
We're happy to cooperate in whatever you process.
But what do you think about the idea? Is it needed? Is it necessary? Or are you so? How would someone like me, who again I'll confess knows nothing about erosion and the effect of trails on it, how would I make a decision? As a lawyer, I would have hired an expert, and he'd have been in here telling, the decisive body, his opinion, and the other side would have hired an expert, and if there was a difference, there'd been cross-examination and parsing. Is that kind of process make sense here?
I mean, to me, no, because again, I don't know I apologize, I missed the presentation by the commission, but just reading the report itself, what I see is a concern for erosion and a concern that bikes and additional trails on the mountain will lead to erosion. I would just say that I'm not aware of any studies, and the folks at NEMBA Regional and the folks at the International Mountain Bike Association are not aware of any studies performed, that peer-reviewed studies that show that bikes lead to more erosion than walkers. I would also say that there seems to be consensus that how a trail is built is the primary factor when considering whether erosion is a concern. Again, we are proposing very expensive, carefully built trails specifically to avoid that concern. If we're happy to go along with whatever process you feel is appropriate and work with an expert if the town wants to bring one in. I did provide to the council earlier today a letter from Nick Aceto, a certified landscape architect in Portland, who is an expert in trail design and building, who reiterated the points I'm making here. But I just think there is a common misconception. It's not just here, it's in a lot of towns and landowners we deal with. There's a misconception that mountain bikes lead to more erosion because I guess it seems intuitive to people. But it's just simply not true. And we've worked successfully with a lot of towns to overcome that misconception over the years, to the point where, for example, the town of Cumberland used to close its trails to mountain bikes but not walkers during mud season. They stopped doing that because we worked closely with them, and we've worked with them closely on just managing the trails in general. Same with the town of Falmouth. This is, I call it a never-ending uphill fight for the New England Mountain Bike Association.
Thanks.
Councilor Fournier.
Have you done any projects with similar challenges to Freeport? And maybe we don't just look at Maine or New England. I know, having friends from Colorado, which the topography and some of the concerns they've done out there have been addressed. And I think that would be helpful for me to see, where that's been done and where it's been successful, if it has been.
Well, there are similar soil types to the Hollis soils and similar. Excuse me for one moment.
That's fine, don't worry. Can't mess anything up behind that curtain, don't worry.
They're at least they're not burning the town hall down. There are similar soil types in Gorham. There are also similar soil types in parts of Carabasset Valley where there's an extensive and well-loved trail system, and you simply don't see erosion as a significant factor in any of these places. And part of that is because trails are carefully built with a lot of money and expertise. And the other part of it is that I think if you asked any landowner we work with, they will say that mountain bikers are the best trail steward group you have. They turn out in droves for trail days. Bikers are more likely to bring a saw out with them after a storm to move fallen trees off of trails. They're more likely to call in and report to us when they see new mud patches or things like that, and then we work with landowners. So I think you just also have a network there to avoid this sort of thing. So I would say that you don't have to look to Colorado. You can look Carabasset, Gorham. My guess is there's similar topography in parts of Augusta where there are popular trail systems. I don't know that for a fact.
All right. Back to public comment. Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to step up to the mic and share thoughts? Or anybody on Zoom? I think we do have somebody on Zoom, so if anybody wants to kind of go on deck and be ready, we'll take a call from Zoom first, and then we'll go back to the room. So Lucy, I think, is waiting to talk on Zoom. So Lucy, if you can hear us, go ahead.
I can hear you.
All right, perfect. We can hear you as well.
Okay, thanks. All right. Hello, town councilors and everybody. Thank you for your dedication to Freeport and for inviting public comment on Hedgehog Mountain Management Plan. I didn't come to speak about NEMBA's wishes. I'm actually speaking, I came to speak about the management plan. My name is Lucy Burkett. I live on Sandy Beach Road in Freeport, and I am an ecological gardening coach, land steward, nursery grower specializing in native plants, and a natural history educator leading natural plant walks and ecology walks. I walk almost daily on trails in and around Freeport, and I guess I've been walking at Hedgehog several times a year for 15 or so years. I've been here for 25. I want to thank the Conservation Commission for all they do for Hedgehog Mountain lands and the other Freeport town lands that they manage, which are so important to me and to the residents of Freeport. We are fortunate to have their experience and knowledge in land management, as well as understanding of ecological and physical qualities of the land itself. I appreciate the professional and thoughtful guidance they have brought to the task of updating Hedgehog's management plan. And I'm here to ask the town council to support passage of this updated plan. Having read and contemplated both versions, my takeaway is that the revised plan stays true to Freeport's intentional acquisition, which is that it be used for many different purposes, recreational, ecological, and otherwise, all of which necessitates holding a careful balance and follows the Commission's ordinance that requires that natural resources remain healthy and intact. At Hedgehog, I am always impressed and excited by the interesting and healthy diversity of native plant species, some of which are not so ample in other parts of Freeport and the region, and certainly not on public lands. This distinguishes some of these plants and what makes this place really special. Considering its proximity to development and a level of activity there, the place still has a lot of ecological integrity, from native plants and associating mushrooms, wildlife, insects, lichen, soil organisms. This healthy and high-functioning ecosystem makes it special in its own right. Also, healthy and established ecosystems such as this are significant players in climate resilience and carbon sequestration. It's also the only public hike I know of around here where Mount Washington can be viewed. And for these reasons and on all seasons, it's become one of my favorite places to walk in Freeport. Soil and ecosystem health and erosion prevention and invasive species prevention are all important elements of this plan. I'd like to speak to this because of the experience that I have in the field. I see how erosion weakens resiliency and how development and sometimes even small disturbances are where invasive species show up and take hold. And where they do, for anyone who works with them knows, they can be beyond difficult and costly to manage. Plants that were once common can quickly be wiped out, and believe me, bringing them back is not nearly as easy as it sounds, and in some cases, it's not even possible. Keep in mind that when the plant species disappear, many of the associating wildlife and insects disappear as well. I think we're starting to get it now that the storms are stormier than ever these days, and the temperature fluctuations and irregularities are causing stress on our lands. Erosion and invasive species cause serious disruption and basically a mess, which then cause more problems, further degrade the landscape, and require much more management for future caretakers, for the future generations. I hope the town of Freeport will keep the long view when it comes to protecting undeveloped areas and healthy, functioning ecosystems, native plants, and wildlife. These are our heritage and are help us all immensely. In addition to making sure that upper elevations of Hedgehog Mountain are protected, I'd also like to highlight the importance of protecting the integrity of the entire property, which is again outlined as a goal of the original and updated management plan. Last week, I was driving past Hedgehog on a weekday morning on a dump run, and passing the trailhead kiosk, I was impressed to see several parties coming and going, maybe 4 people, some with dogs, one man walking with a cane. Well, they must have been having a good chat because they were still there talking when I drove past again, heading out. And it reminded me what a treasure Hedgehog Mountain is and how it is shared by so many. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Lucy. Is there anybody in the room that we haven't heard from? Margaret, I know you had your hand up, but if you want to wait and address all the comments at once, otherwise I'm afraid it might be a back and forth sort of ping pong all night. And then Stephanie, I see your hand up next, but we've got somebody in the room, I think, who's coming up to the podium, and then we'll go back to Stephanie on Zoom. So yeah, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm Jennifer Melville. I live over on Cove Road. I just wanted to, I did send some comments in, but I just wanted to address a couple of the questions around erosion and just sort of highlight a couple of things that were brought up by some of the previous speakers, especially the fellow who came with his kids, the mountain bike guy. I'm always going to bring kids in future to a hearing, so I get so much airtime from the council. I thought that was an excellent strategy. So keep it in mind if you ever want a lot of airtime. I think that his point was that there would be many more people and many more trails in the summit area, so that would lead over time to more impact and more erosion. Regardless of whether or not, if you can believe the idea, the mountain bike trails are equal or even better than hiking trails, there would be more impact and more erosion because there's going to be more use and more trails. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. I also think that it really depends, as he said, on how you design the trails. I worked for the Appalachian Mountain Club for years. I most previously worked, I've worked for almost 4 decades now, helping towns protect land, preserve land. I've worked on many projects that involve mountain biking trail projects, really great projects, one in Bethel, which is fantastic, a couple in Vermont. They're really wonderful projects, and it really does come down to how you design the trail system. I don't happen to think that Hedgehog is appropriate for an intensive system because of its size and its topography, and because, as the previous speaker and the first speaker spoke about, the reason that this property was protected was really to allow a lot of uses and for quiet enjoyment, which is really what's in the plan. So I would just urge you to adopt the plan as it's written. We can look at the mountain biking plan, see if something can work there. But I just want to be really clear about what I think the impact would be of such a plan. I know that's not what we're really talking about today, but I would urge you to adopt the plan. The Conservation Commission has done an amazing job. We're so lucky to have such a knowledgeable commission with people who have real professional expertise. You know, this isn't just a bunch of volunteers who don't know anything. They have a lot of expertise, and so I would take that into account. So I think that's it for me. Thank you so much for the time today.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Stephanie, I think I promised we'd go to you next. You're calling in from Zoom, so if you can hear me, go ahead and start when you're ready.
All right. My name is Stephanie Millette, resident at 2 Hummingbird Lane in Freeport. I had a quadruple knee tear 5 years ago as a Freeport walker, and know the trail systems in Freeport now in terms of how well they served my knee while I was in recovery for almost 2 years. And Hedgehog Hill was not a trail system that I remember very fondly, because while I love nature and loved the flat parts, it actually wasn't that well maintained. And while there are gorgeous, gorgeous places throughout Freeport, and I love them all, one of the points that when I think about trail quality and think about the trails that I gravitated to, I think about how I found trails 5 years ago. And I was looking on the sites of trail runner clubs and mountain biking clubs because I knew those trails were maintained, and I knew that I'd be able to start jogging without tripping and hurting myself. And when I think about the trails that are the most risky to me, they're actually usually the ones maintained by organizations like the Audubon Society that have that conservation focus. And so, kind of like Ed Bradley, I don't know what side I would pick if I was in your shoes. But when I think about accessibility, and I think about the number of people who would enjoy the quality of their recreational experience, that comes to mind as I listen to this conversation and hear the resources that the town actually has right now to make that trail accessible all the time, and the resources that our community will get for that system if we partnered with an outside agency. So that was the only thing that came into my mind as I listened to this discussion, and I appreciate the civility in the room and the ability for everyone to be able to bring their parents. For the parents to be able to bring their kids. For the parents to be able to bring their kids. By the way, as someone with a growing family, it means a lot that that I can hear those things happening and know that every community member of all ages can be in that room. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Mr. Arsenault.
Yeah, Andrew Arsenault, Freeport resident.
I've been asked to start the 3-minute timer because we have so
There you
many
go.
people lined up.
There you go, boy.
Because I know we got a lot of people.
Well, we saw you get up and we know we had to do something here.
My
so.
kids right here?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, unlimited. Yeah.
There you go. I rise in support of the bike trails and the manufactured bike trails. Years ago, I was on the Conservation Commission, and I know we always had a hard time getting volunteers to get things done up on Hedgehog. We got a lot of work done up at Florida Lake, which was great, bog trails. But it's always an ongoing battle, and anytime a group like this shows up, the mountain bike trail, I think he's correct. Other people come along to help, and I think it'd be great if we took this leap forward and took a chance and put these bike trails up there. We got 200 acres there. We should be able to find some room. When I was a kid, Daryl and I grew up in Freeport, we snowmobiled. We rode dirt bikes all over town. Rode dirt bikes and snowmobiles up over Hedgehog, plenty of times. Cut from the desert of Maine across the Hedgehog over to Beach Hill and keep on going. Now kids ride mountain bikes. They're not riding snowmobiles around Freeport because there's no snow. And they're probably not riding dirt bikes around town that much. But now kids and parents go mountain biking. And it's too bad they have to go too far away. I know they like to go to other trails, but it'd be nice if there was something in Freeport. We talked about this. We've talked about it for a year or so now. I really think it's important we take this leap and try to move forward to diversify things in Freeport and bring people in, as we want to not expand per se, but diversify our community, our, business base or whatever you want to call it. I think it'll bring local people, bring people from away. They might eat in small storefronts downtown. They might shop locally. And people that live here will be able to bike. So I think we really have to take a chance with this. And I don't think it's a big chance. I agree that the groomed trails, when we dirt biked through the woods years ago, they were not as well maintained as these guys will make them. And if it does bring support, and if it does bring maintenance days and trail days, which we had a hard time finding. We would get some kids from the high school that had a project to go up and put up fence posts and put up trail signs and numbers and stuff, but it was a lot of work. And I'm glad it's going better now, maybe, but it's still worth a shot to bring these guys in and have a bigger presentation from them and bring in from some other areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
You're going to step up. There we go. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. My name is Leanne Nichols. I live here in Freeport as well, and I thank you, Andrew. Those were some nice comments and pretty much took everything I wanted to say, almost. I just want to say that I really want to urge the council to figure out a way to support this project. I am a lifelong mountain biker. My husband and I have been trying desperately to get our 2 daughters into mountain biking. This might help. Getting kids active nowadays is pretty difficult with the technology and all the other enticements that they have for their time. And we do have a phenomenal resource there that I do believe 6 miles out of that 200 acres isn't too terribly treacherous. And I would really love to see our town make that investment, because as of right now, the trail that I like the best is in Bethel. And so I have to travel a long ways to get a ride that doesn't hurt me too badly, because mountain biking can be technical and challenging. And I don't know, Blackstrap is kind of freaks me out, and the West Side Trail in Yarmouth kind of freaks me out. Even Bradbury can be a little difficult for me. So I'd like it to, I love the idea of a groomed trail right here in Freeport at Hedgehog. So please try to figure out a way to make that happen for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Who wants to go next? Yeah, come on up.
Thank you, and I want to thank the Conservation Commission for all the hard work that they did on this plan. I'm Sarah Haggerty, and I live on Hunter Road, so I am over there almost every day. I ski there if only we could get some snow. I snowshoe if we could get some snow. I run over there, I walk over there, and I mountain bike over there. Not on the summit, but everywhere else. I did send some comments to you all late last night, but I just wanted to reiterate a couple of them here. Really just focusing on the management plan. I think the Conservation Commission did a fantastic job. If you look at the original plan and this plan, they're extremely consistent, and they're based in data and facts. And I think that one of the wonderful things about Hedgehog Mountain is that it does a great job of balancing conservation and recreation, and those two things don't always mix very well. And I think currently Hedgehog Mountain does both of those things. And I also want to, if you're not out there every day, it's a busy place. There are tons of people out there all the time. So I would love to be involved in the additional discussions on the mountain biking proposal. I agree, there's 200 acres out there. What we're talking about is putting additional stuff on top of what's there instead of spreading it out. So I'd love to be involved in additional conversations about mountain biking, but I think it's more than just yes or no at this point. I think that we should look at the management plan and see the great work that's in there. And I also strongly support supporting our Conservation Commission and the work that needs to be done out there. And when you're looking for volunteers, I live right down the road. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Katrina Van Duzen. I live at 16 Birch Point Road in Freeport. I wrote you similar comments, but we got this opportunity, might as well talk. I haven't been following closely the plans for expanding mountain bikes use at Hedgehog, so I was happy to hear Matt talk. But I am concerned. I don't think the property should be developed or promoted as a regional mountain bike destination. I think that incidental use of the trails for mountain biking, hopefully not at the summit, seems to work. I've been out there on my bike myself. However, because the trails are well used by walkers, parking is limited. The summit is a special, vulnerable place. And the Hedgehog property is not large. I mean, 200 acres maybe sounds large, but it's not for what the use that we're talking about. I don't think Hedgehog can accommodate this much more use. I think that the Conservation Commission has deliberated carefully on how to best manage this gem of a place going forward. And I don't see it, I mean, now it's come to be one versus the other. We've set it up that way, and Ed said, well, how do I decide between the two? I think the Conservation Commission are the stewards of this property and know what it's for and have put together a plan that protects what's valuable about it. So I don't see it the way Ed articulated it. I agree that it's hard to figure out what to do, but I think they did a lot of that hard work for you. And I also think that it's got, I mean, that beech forest is gorgeous. There's a lot of cool plants out there that I really appreciate having. And with this much more trails in that space, it's not going to be the same natural place that it is now. Maybe that's not that important to people, but it's important to me. So I just wanted to make a case for the trees as well. And I do see a lot of people with canes, people with dogs. Not a lot of parking. It's not overused, but I feel that it will be a hard place to have a whole lot of mountain bikers and the regular users. And I think it's a place where people who are less abled can go, either side of the road, because you're right there at the trail. They're sure they could be better and they could be flatter, but it's a nice, accessible place for all kinds of people, and I worry that that would be compromised with a big increase in use. So think about it. And thanks to the Conservation Commission, and I think they did a really good job.
Thank you, Katrina.
Hello. Do not touch, sorry. My name is Dan Walker. I live at 37 Hidden Oaks Drive in Freeport, which is off of Upper Mass Landing. We've lived here for a little over 16 years. I'm a big user of trails in this town, and I wanted to, I don't know if everyone, I think people realize how many trails there are, but I was looking today, and between Freeport Conservation Trust and the town and the state, I guess, we have 32 different trail systems. So, it's a nice, there's a lot of them. Not one of them are designed or even close to being designed for mountain biking. We have a lot of places. We have a lot of nature in this town. I live close to Audubon. I'm in Audubon a couple times a week. I'm at Hedgehog, probably once a month. The Hedgehog Mountain Management Plan is, I think it's a really amazing effort by the Conservation Commission, and the effort behind it and the thoughts, I think it all can continue. And I just think this idea of a mixed use there should continue, but it should allow for there to be an expansion of mountain biking there. Like I said, there's 32 other trails in this town that don't have mountain bikes. And there's going to be a lot of this part that's going to be primarily walking. But to allow just a small part, or a part of this, of Hedgehog, to be allowed to be used for mountain biking, I don't think it's going to hurt the conservation mission of it. The other piece is that one of the biggest threats that was outlined to Hedgehog, and really the first one that was listed, is limited capacity of volunteer labor. And as you've heard, those trails, I use them a lot, and I probably should help maintain them more. I really should. But they get hit hard, and things happen, and I think something like this, I think we'd have more, as you heard from others. Mountain bikers are very much like hikers. They're very much, they take care of their trails, even more so, because when there's a blowdown, you don't just simply step over it. You have to completely move it and get it out of the way. I also think there's, as you've seen, there's a real commitment in this community to do this, and I think on behalf, a lot of money has already been committed to this, and I think which demonstrates support. Much less people just coming out and showing and working hard to try to make this happen. But I'll leave it at that. I'm almost at my 3 minutes. But thank you very much for allowing me, and thank you, Conservation Commission. You did a wonderful job with this, except for one little part.
Thank you, Dan. All right, who wants to go next? There you go. Thanks, Steve.
Hi, Council. My name is Jim Ahern, Freeport resident, and I had some nice prepared notes, but forget about it. I wanted to just respond to a few things that came up. Councilor Bradley, to your point, we have extraordinary experts in knowledgeable people that composed and put together their recommendations that are based on science, that are based on hours of observation and research, and I think the plan that they've composed reflects the recommendations reflect the findings. Somebody referenced earlier peer-reviewed. Okay, maybe we could send this out and peer review it, but this is essentially the style of a peer review paper with a team of researchers that went out and did the work, and they've come back with their recommendations that are based on the findings of the site, whether we're for or against. I don't think they went into this with a bias other than what the direction is of the Conservation Commission. Me personally, I love to cycle. Last night, instead of watching Tom Brady's swan song, I was on YouTube watching Matthew Vanderpool and Matt Van Aert in a World Cup cyclocross race. If that went over your head, that's okay. But this is like, I get the fever of biking. I put over 3,000 miles on my bike and countless hours inside on a trainer. I love riding. I would love to see more trails in Freeport. Absolutely. To Dan's point, there's only 32 trails in Freeport. There could be more. Why are we here in Freeport? What makes Freeport so special? And I think it is the natural environment. As far as the business argument, okay, let's take e-bikes out of it, but that'll come next. We'll have to figure out what to do with e-bikes. The number one growing segment of cyclists are gravel bikes. And gravel bikes are not doing downhill enduro type races. They're using the flatter trail networks. So is there an opportunity there for Freeport to connect all of our trails? Absolutely. And to create a more accessible network? Absolutely. I think there's a lot of potential. I'm really excited that the cycling community has stepped out, but I'm totally in awe of the work that the Conservation Commission has done. And in keeping with the volunteer nature of how the town works, I really appreciate that they've come forward and they put the time in and they've made their recommendations, and I hope that you see fit to support their recommendations. So, and as far as support, I think, yeah, mountain bikers have support, conservation folks have support. We're all Freeporters. We're trying to do the best we can, and we're trying to preserve it, and we're trying to make sure that it remains a multi-use place. So, thanks very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Hi, I'm Steve Mills. I live at 33 Sherwood Drive in Freeport. I also work in Freeport, Maine Beer Company, and my kids go to school here in Freeport, so I have a vested interest in Freeport. You probably know Maine Beer Company. We support our environmental nonprofits. We take that very seriously. We work with a lot of the folks that are here, being represented by some of those groups, and some who aren't here, so, and we're also a business, so this is a weird thing, and you're in a tough spot, by the way. So I want to thank the Conservation Commission for what they put forward, the plan, and for all the work, more importantly, I think. I just one qualifier, and I'm sorry, I may have misunderstood. My hearing's not great. Are we talking about since the time you've been measuring for like 30, 40 years, that 2/3 of the highly erodible soil is gone now?
Since the last management plan, which was approved in 2004.
So 2/3 of that's gone now. So my point being, if that indeed is the case, then I would ask that you reject the proposal, because it sounds like we've got a problem now with the current plan, and the recommendation is let's kind of keep doing what we're doing. It sounds like that might not be working. But what I would ask you to do is ask them to work with NIMBA and see if they can come up with a compromise that's going to be a better plan for Freeport. As a business, I'd really like it because, at least 20% of our tax base comes from businesses like ours. That's important to Freeport. It's the thing that makes Freeport unique in our area. Like, we need those businesses thriving. We need our buildings occupied. So, I know we all want to think with our heart all the time, but sometimes we also have to think with our head. And I'm hoping we can come up with a way that we can do both. A lot of other good points have been made on both sides, but I wanted to add that.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else? Yeah, come on up, Brian.
Hi, I'm Ryan Burke. I am the chair of the Freeport Conservation Commission. Very grateful for a lot of the nice comments made today. Those should probably all be directed to Margaret, but the accolades aside, she did a great job. She did a lot of that work. I'm not here to say anything about mountain bikes. I'm just here to talk about the management plan. That's what's before the council tonight, and just give you a little background on the Conservation Commission on a whole. So we are tasked by the town council based on ordinance number 35. There's a lot that's in that ordinance, but the main line to take away is that we're tasked with maintaining the natural, scenic, and open conditions of the current properties, which includes hedgehog. We are excluded from erecting buildings, roads, other structures. We are not allowed to remove or destroy trees, shrubs, or other plants. We can conduct no activity that involves excavation, dredging, or removal of soil. And as Margaret touched upon, that includes activities detrimental to drainage, flood control, water control, and soil conservation. We currently manage 5 miles at Hedgehog. Some of the comments have been mixed. They're not great. They're great. Either way, they need work. Going to 11.3 miles, quick math, that's 125% increase. We currently operate with 7 volunteers who keep up as best they can. We have a budget of $7,500 a year, $3,000 of which goes out the window immediately for mowing other properties. So that's about $4,500 to manage Hedgehog and 4 other properties, Hedgehog being the biggest. And that's it. And so that's what we're tasked with. We're not tasked with anything else. We're not tasked with driving foot traffic in the town or even at Hedgehog. We're there to maintain it in its natural, scenic, and open condition. And I think that plan does that.
Thanks, Ryan.
That's it.
Hi, my name is Ethel Wilkerson. I live on Elm Street in Freeport. I'm a former member of the Conservation Commission, so thank you for, I think, when I was on it, the existing plan was already in place, so I didn't have any part in putting that together. But I appreciate the comments and the thought into the plan. I think you did a good job of carrying forward the original intent, making it more specific, and trying to strike a balance between what you're charged to do. And I don't want to talk about mountain bikes because I don't really know what is, I just want to say that, point out that it's the Conservation Commission that's charged with stewarding Hedgehog Mountain. They're going to be charged with it, not this group of people, probably not, but in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And that's their responsibility. And they've taken a really careful job. They've taken a year to look through the surveys, the data, and what their capacity is and what the threats are, and trying to strike that balance between what they're charged to do as a commission to really represent and, I think, protect what their charge is, which is taking care of Freeport. Big changes are sometimes scary because you don't know what's going to happen, right? But no matter what, we add 11 more miles of trail on Hedgehog. We bring 5,500, I don't know how many more people a year to that property. Yes, you can have volunteers, you can have promised volunteers, you can have promised more capacity, but at the end of the day, it's the Conservation Commission that is in charge of that property. So just pointing that out, that they are taking this responsibility very seriously. Perhaps it's conservative, but that is their task, to steward this property. So I ask that you really consider the audience and why they came up with this property, because it's their job, their volunteer job. They don't get paid for it. I don't think there's any paid staff in the town of Freeport that's in charge of maintaining trails. So just kind of think that through when you're making these decisions too. We can change that the next budget. We should, but that's not really the task at here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Ethel.
Hi, my name's Leslie Graham, and I'm a new resident to Freeport in the last year and a half. I live on Flying Point Road, and the thing that really enticed us to move here was the environmental aspect and the fact that there is so much beauty and so many things to do from an outside perspective. But I think that I'm a big proponent of the mountain biking plan because I think Freeport has to really evolve itself and to be more of a four-season destination to really grow and compete with a lot of other outside destination towns. I also think that the NIMBA is a very well-regarded organization, and I think that they know in order for this to be successful, there has to be not only a balance between the desire to open this space up for more mixed use, but to also be mindful of the work that the Conservation Trust is doing, be mindful of what Freeport's all about, which is the environment and nature. So I think you have a great basis and a lot of really good fact-based knowledge folks to partner with in order to get this off the ground. And I think they have a really good brain trust and come with a lot of good concrete information to help you guys make a decision. But I think it's really important for Freeport to evolve. And I think part of Hedgehog Mountain and opening it up to mountain bikers is the ability to evolve and attract new people. As a mountain biker, I think there's a misconception that it's a constant throngs of people on the trails. This isn't, to the other gentleman's point, this isn't going to be a high trafficked competition type trail. It's meant for families and maybe intermediate mountain bikers. But mountain biking isn't like a ski slope. You don't have tons of people going one after the another after another. And it's very intermittent. And I walk Hedgehog Mountain every day, and I walk Wolf's Neck every day. We have a lot of hikers here, but again, it's a very intermittent activity. And I think there's a misconception that it's just going to be so jam-packed with people that it won't be able to be enjoyed for mixed use. If you walk the trails in Yarmouth, which is a mixed-use trail, it's very sporadic that you run into mountain bikers as a hiker, and vice versa as a mountain biker. It's very sporadic. You run into hikers. So I think there can be a balance struck between the mixed use and come to an agreeable balance to still be mindful of the environment. So thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Here we are again. So it's amazing. I was sitting on this dais. Peter, pause. I was sitting on this dais when we realized we needed to do a change for downtown Freeport. And so luckily enough, I was able to partner up with Mary, who's the president of FEDC, and we interviewed 13 different consultants to try to figure out a way to help Freeport as it changes. And one of the things that all 13 of those consultants said is that we need to diversify. You know, we're no longer an outlet town, Amazon, COVID, all those things have changed that. But what an exciting place we have, because we have so many natural resources. And so it was actually Peter and I that were like, hey, Nimba, want to come here and build some trails? And I thought, well, this is going to be easy. Here I am 2 years later. So, and then we found sort of the right path to do this is to work with the Conservation Commission, which we were also very excited to do. So thank you for your hard and also year-long later, here you are, long-time work that they did. So I do feel like, as I sit and I absorb everything, I feel like, yes, there's so many different needs. There's the needs for residents wanting to do things outside. COVID made that even more apparent, how excited they were to find out that if you lived in Freeport, there was so much you could do during COVID. There is the conservation concern that we've been years without knowing what the concerns were there. And then to my hat as a counselor, former counselor, and as a chamber position now, very concerned about our business. Right now, Main Street looks like it's doing okay, but it is not. Landlords have been extremely generous with tenants. A lot of tenants are sitting there paying percentage rents. This is not sustainable for the tenant or the landlord. And so we need to diversify. We need to bring in other people so that our Main Street can continue to be enjoyed for years and years to come. So I would love to see that we table this for a moment, since we just got this information. My favorite tagline is, we're better and stronger together. I would like an opportunity to work with the Conservation Commission to see if we can come up with a plan that respects their findings and that also gives us an opportunity to diversify, to support our businesses and to support the needs that our residents have said with a downtown revision that they want. So that would be my request this evening, a little more time.
And I think the thing that I would add to it is that we couldn't have two more committed groups. We've spent a lot of time with the folks, with NIMBA, and these are folks who are committed to conservation. They're committed to taking care of the trails. They're committed to doing good as well. And the conservation group is also committed to doing good. It's not as though we have two groups who's one committed to bad and one committed. We're all committed to good. The businesses are committed to good for the town. So I echo that I think we've got to be able to find what works for all of us. I would like Freeport to be the town that says we can work through things together. And so table it. Let's find the right way forward, because I think there is a way.
We did it between the two of us, 3 minutes.
For your comments and also for your hard work in getting us to where we are. Anybody else before we bring the discussion back up to council? Sort of last chance to weigh in. Anybody on Zoom has their hand up? All right, seeing no activity. Councilor Fournier, do you want to close the public hearing for us?
Certainly. Motion to close public hearing?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, council, what do you think? Councilor Fournier.
I have a question. So if we vote to pass this, it kind of puts a kibosh to mountain bikes.
As is what?
As is.
What Mr. Warner says, if he doesn't have access to the summit, then there's no point in building mountain bike trails.
So I'm uncomfortable with that. I think a motion to table might be a good idea to let people to get together. I think we need to utilize that, and I was probably, people don't want to hear that, but ripping dirt bikes up there back in the day with Louis Porter and my friend Andrew and whatever, and probably didn't do much good for the environment back then, but, that certainly has got a lot more use now, and I have been up to Carrabassett Valley, and I've seen the success they've had there, and it's a draw. My grandkids go up there, and it'd be nice to be able to have the grandkids and other people to do something locally. So I'd like to see us hopefully work together and come up with a win-win.
You want to weigh in, Councilor Lawrence?
So is this legally binding, or can it be changed on the fly? Is it?
Good question.
I think the ordinance says the management plan needs to be approved by a 2/3 majority of the Conservation Commission, then we need to have a public hearing, and then we need to approve it. So it's not easy to change on the fly, I guess is the short answer.
Okay, but that's the plan, and it's a plan is kind of like guidelines, goals. Here's what we'd like to do.
To answer your question, it's not an ordinance that's legally enforceable, but I think the idea is that the council would promulgate rules in the spirit of the management plan if we had to make ordinances.
Right. Yeah, you don't want it to be changed quickly. I get it. So, yeah, I would be in favor of tabling this for right now because of that one provision. Because I do think there's a way to work through this. I think, and if we tried it, I think it would work. I don't know. I'm with Ed there. I don't know where the erosion, we're talking about erosion and protecting everything. So, but I think this is a great opportunity for conservation and business to work together to bring what we need to this town. So I'd be in favor of tabling.
Councilor Bradley.
Yeah, my comments earlier were focused on a need for information that was sort of neutral and arm's length, because even though I don't see this as a conflict in terms of goals and objectives, there are two different points of view that are being presented for decision. I like the idea of collaboration and further work between the Conservation Commission and the mountain bike people, because I've heard in this conversation ways in which conservation could be benefited in extremely you got 7 volunteers and $4,500, and you got 4 properties in Hedgehog Mountain, and you wonder why there's erosion on your trails. And that is something you have to deal with every day, and it's got to be a burden for you. All of a sudden, you've got a bunch of rich people who are saying, we want to help you do a better job with that, and all you got to do in this collaboration is tell them what you need. And I would expect that to be answered, not only mountain bikes, but all the other trails that you deal with. This shouldn't be limited to just what one group wants. It should be, how does the town deal with trails and outdoor? And, there's a lot of things in play right now that could go into the conversation if you wanted to do it. So I view it as an opportunity to the Conservation Commission as opposed to a rejection of your plan. I have some questions that I would go into in detail if I thought that I wanted to really understand the plan. I don't see a need to do that if you're willing, and it really comes down to willing. I mean, nothing we do here is going to put you at a table to collaborate if you don't want to. I mean, we could put you at a table, but you won't collaborate. So, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just have been through it, Oh, yeah, we'll do what the council asked us to do. We'll sit down at a table and nobody talks. But if you guys are really willing to work together, I think this is a great opportunity, and I think this conversation has been very positive, both in terms of what you've presented, in terms of what we need to do as a town to protect Hedgehog, but also with the way the business community and the biking community has identified their willingness to participate in a bigger solution than the one that's on the table. So I would support the tabling, but I don't want to shove anything down the Conservation Commission's throat. If you want to vote on this, you can have it, from my perspective.
Anybody else? Councilor Pillsbury.
I mean, I echo a lot of what everyone said tonight. I'm squarely stuck on the fence on this one, but I worry about just tabling something without putting a structure to it to make it a process that's going to be effective, right? If we just say, go figure it out, I don't think that does anybody any favors. I actually think it's to the detriment of potentially both sides. So I'm curious what the thoughts are for us to make a process that's going to be timely, because we also have a tendency of kicking the can down the road and never coming back to stuff. But also, I want this to be productive, and I also don't want it to seem like we're dictating one course of action versus another. I mean, there's some serious concerns raised, and I think we need to work through them, and I don't know who has the expertise to lead that, but I'd be interested in having a dialogue right now around how we see that structure going, because I think that's the crux of it. If we don't get that right, we're not going to solve this problem to the benefit of our community.
One other point. The other thing that was very interesting to me is that, one, we don't have mountain bikes now running it, and we've already lost half of the soil on top. We've done nothing. Or maybe not nothing is not the right word, but the soil at the top there has eroded, right?
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, step up to the podium, yeah.
Yeah, so the gentleman who spoke isn't incorrect. The plan states that the soil is, in the existing plan, it says 14 inches or less in the summit area, and the updated plan says still 14 inches in some places, but it's less in others. That is due to natural processes. It's not something that the Conservation Commission could have put a stop to. That's just what happens when it rains and slowly washes away soil. So I think characterizing it as the Conservation Commission not doing our job is not factual, and I think it's also worth noting when it comes to that that's why it's highlighted that conserving the soil and not disturbing it is so important, because that's 20 years with just natural, for the most part, undisturbed change. If you add more impacts to it, that's going to happen a lot faster, and I think taking the don't throw the baby out with the bathwater approach is not one if we're keeping in mind the Conservation Commission ordinance of protecting soil, limiting erosion, and also what the other impacts on the property would be, because changes over time from natural processes allow the ecosystem to adjust to it. Quick changes, stripping the soil and having that happen very quickly, leads to a very different result. So it is a more complex natural function than just a matter of soil's gone, it's going to be gone anyways, so oh well.
I wasn't trying to imply that they weren't doing it. I'm just saying it was a natural process, and half the soil's gone.
And not half the soil. I think that's an oversimplification.
I think you said 14, and you said something like 6 inches is there now. So.
In some places, it's not totally uniform.
Still, it's in some places, but if something's not done, right, is there a way to stop that process? I know it's a natural process. I mean, we're trying to stop climate change, so that's a much bigger problem than what this could be, right? And here's a team that might be able to help with that.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great question for a soil scientist that I'm probably not qualified to answer.
As Fournier?
I think Matt hit the nail on the head. As far as, setting a drop-dead date, and I would really like to see us come up and discuss a time period of 6 or 8 months, resources so people can get what we need for information to be utilized, and a staff person, and make this a success. I don't think it's right for us to say to go back and not give any resources to any of the groups. So I think we, as the council, have the responsibility to make that investment so we can have truly look at that in an official way. So, Matt, thank you for that comment, because I think it's been, like you say, we do kick the can down the road. Let's not kick it down the road. Let's do it date specific and put the proper resources to it. And I'd like to see more discussion to come to resolution on that.
Councilor Daniele?
I'd be in favor of tabling it for tonight, but I'd like to not see it get kicked down the can even that long. I would like to see this come back to us on the 7th, our first meeting, and say, all right, this is giving 3 weeks. Let's have some conversations, let's have some ideas, and let's figure out if there's a good way forward as a group. But let's have it come right back, and then we can decide to table it again at that point. But let's not leave this going. And to Matt's point, I think that's a good thing. Let's put some structure in it. What do we want to see? Do we want to say that there's going to be a public hearing? Do we want to have an extra council meeting? Maybe we're talking about having one on whatever time. Maybe we have this as a follow-up, right? Bring some groups in. Let's have a discussion where it's not. I don't know. Anyway, thank you.
Councillor Bradley?
Yeah, I mean, we were at a similar point with respect to sewer about 3 months ago. And the council, with the help of everybody on both sides of the sewer issue, put a small group together to talk through all of these issues and to come back to the council with recommendations. And we could follow that model. It would require somebody on the council to take a lead. It would take somebody from the conservation, Margaret perhaps, and somebody from the mountain bike group to agree to work together, want to work together, and then fill it out with a couple other knowledgeable, maybe involved people, and come back and report to us on first structure, to Matt's point, and then secondly on issues that needed to be addressed, and then if they needed resources to ask for them, because that's what we did, and it worked, I think. I shouldn't say it worked. We've gotten to the point where I think we have a reasonable set of recommendations to bring to the council on sewer, and for me, that's what work. And that was nowhere near possible when we first sat down. So I offer that as a suggestion.
There's a way to go forward.
I agree with most of the sentiment up here. I've been encouraging both the commission and the folks from NEMBA to meet and talk and discuss. It's been difficult until you've been able to do the study to know what your, I don't want to say demands, what your requests are. So now that that's done, I would strongly encourage, I think what everybody else up here is saying is, let's get back around the table and say, if we were to have mountain bikes here, is there a way to do it and still maintain the goals that we want to set out in the management plan? If the answer is absolutely not, there's no mountain bikes above 180 feet, okay, that's the best the commission can do, then it's sort of up to us to figure out what to do. But I wonder if there is a middle ground. I wonder if there is a way to say, if you want to build mountain bike trails, these are some conditions that would make it more acceptable to the commission, to the property. I don't know that there is a middle ground there, but I'm thinking there might be. If that requires some neutral arbiter scientist to come in and say, here's what we think, we don't really care if it goes one way or the other, but just from a science point of view, here's what would make the project successful, let us know, and we're happy to support the effort behind that, I think, is the sense you're getting. I would want to put a date on it. I don't want to do 6 to 8 months. I'm thinking more along where Jake is, a number of weeks. My sense is if there's a compromise to be worked out, it can be worked out pretty quickly. And if there's not a compromise to be worked out, let's just say that and move forward. The one last comment I have is that I don't think I've heard, between the big workshop we had here in June, when we also had a full room, and tonight, and all the discussions I've had, I don't really think I've heard from almost anybody, very few people, mountain bikes are bad, we don't want mountain bikes. I think what everybody has been saying, the majority of the consensus anyway, is saying, sure, mountain bikes are great, we just need to be careful about where and how and when. So that's the spirit, I think, that's where I'm coming from, is it'd be great to see mountain bikes in more places in Freeport. I think that's our reputation. I think that's what makes us unique. We're an outdoor recreation-driven community. It doesn't mean we mean to put mountain bikes everywhere on every trail system. But if there is a way to do it, let's figure it out. And if there's not, I would respect that and say, if science says that's not a good place to put it, let's not do it. So like everybody else, I'm on the fence. I'm not saying I'm on one side or the other, but I would like to see more information. And I think the two groups that we've been talking about are the right ones to get together and see if there is something to be worked out. So I'm fine saying 3 weeks, which would be our February 7th meeting, if that's what you guys think. If anybody on the commission thinks that's not valid for some reason, speak up. but that's what I would suggest. Councilor Brown?
I think that's a great suggestion, and after a brief consultation with my highly respected cohort here on the left, I'd suggest Jake play a role in this, and he said quietly that he'd love to do that if the groups would accept him. He's got an environmental bent. He's also a businessman. He's going to get both points of view, and he'll know what we need as counselors to make the decision if collaboration isn't
Close by proximity to Hedgehog Mountain. Who lives closest?
Yeah, who lives closest?
Yeah.
Peter, you going to come help me?
Jake, you're also a resident of the Summit Zone. Your house.
Was he above 180 feet?
I'm close.
We both are.
Yeah.
So if that's the will, it sounds like we're kind of got consensus for somebody to offer a motion to table till February 7th. Councilor Pillsbury.
Well, I mean, we're making a decision on behalf of participants that have to engage in this process. Should we see, what their thoughts are in terms of when they can get together? Because setting a date doesn't do much good.
I feel like we're tabling until the 7th, but we could table again if we had to, but that kind of gives that first, let's try to get some progress by that time. Again, I think it makes sense to make this urgent. Let's get a decision. Let's try to put some pressure towards making consensus.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair? Sure. Was there a group from the conservation, Brian, you're back there? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Was there a group that was talking? Was there like a designated group, subgroup that was working from the Conservation Commission? Margaret's not in her head, but could we get that, see if we could time that up to see if there's a possibility? I'll donate the space and staff it. If Jake wants to be part of that from the council, that would be super helpful. And then see if we can get member representatives like here sometime. I mean, we'll just do emails and see what all the availabilities are before the 7th. If it doesn't happen, I think we just report back to the council that the meeting will be on X date because we couldn't make it happen. Is that better? At least having a plan, yeah.
Works for me.
I'd like to make a motion that we table the Conservation Commission's report till the February 7th, and that Jake be appointed as council representative to the working committee.
Second.
Thank you, guys. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Just point out that we could have a second counselor if anybody wants to join.
Noble effort. Anybody opposed? I think that's 7-0. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I love seeing a full room. I love hearing all the comments. It's nice to see everybody engaged. Maybe we'll take a minute or two.
No worries. So I'll see Jonathan tomorrow. Your stapler or whatever it is. Yeah, okay.
Lots of people keep growing. Don't do that.
I'm not really committed to it.
I think we've got to have some of those back.
Want to keep going? All right. We still have a lot of business that we need to do here. So if anybody wants to continue discussions in the hallway, I welcome you to do that. Next up on our agenda is a probably less controversial item regarding our liquor license for the Hilton Garden Inn.
Hey, how are you? Good. How are you?
This requires a public hearing. Which is being proposed for February 7th, which is our next meeting. Weeks. So Counselor Daniele, since you're here, would you be willing to make that order?
Be it ordered that a public hearing be set for February 7th, 2023 at the Town Council meeting starting at 6 p.m. to consider a new liquor license for the Hilton Garden Inn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Egan. Any discussion on this? All right. All in favor of setting a public hearing for the liquor license?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next up, we have item 1123, which I think was tabled from last time, if I remember right, which is regarding adopting the Board of Assessment Reviews policies and procedures. And that is in our packet and also on the table. Anybody have questions about this before we add it to the floor?
You had a suggested amendment.
I did have a suggested amendment. My suggestion was down here. If we look at paragraph G on page 2, regarding procedures of the board, we say that the board may, by majority vote, make other reasonable rules of procedure for the conduct of meetings or hearings as may be necessary or appropriate in the board's discretion. The chairperson may waive any of the rules of procedure set forth. And my suggestion was to strike that the chairperson can waive any of the rules on his own or her own. It seems a little arbitrary. I don't mind that the board wants to vote to change the rules, but to have the chair do it on their own doesn't make sense to me. So my amendment, once we get to it, will be to strike that sentence. So, anybody else? If not, Councilor Lawrence, since you got to skip one by being out of the room, do you want to read this motion for 1123?
To consider, let's see, you want me to just read the be it ordered?
Be it ordered, yeah.
Be it ordered that the Board of Assessment Reviews policies and procedures be adopted.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Daniele. I'll offer an amendment that the last sentence in section 3, paragraph G, beginning with the chairperson may waive any of the rules, be struck.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Daniele. Any questions, discussion on either the motion or the amendment? All in favor of the amendment striking the clause?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Any questions on the rules themselves as amended? None? Okay. All in favor of passing the new rules?
Aye.
Anybody, any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously as well. Okay. That's the last of our action items. However, now that we're in other business, I did threaten that I wanted to bring up one item to vote on, which is to add a council retreat to our calendar, which I propose doing Saturday, January 28th at 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
At a location to be determined. I assume we want a place that the public is, that's open to the public?
The only rule is it has to be accessible and open to the public. It could be a private residence, but that person would have to commit to letting any and all people who want to attend.
I withdraw my offer.
Including your worst enemy that lives in
Yeah,
California,
yeah,
can fly out
exactly.
here and attend that public meeting. And
I thought it was just going to be us, you know,
and I was
coffee and
thinking
donuts.
that it most likely will probably not be a well-attended meeting by the public, but they're certainly welcome. My suggestion was going to be library or community center or something like that.
That's fine.
Just
That's
to go
good.
to a different spot.
Library nice.
I don't know if the library's open that early.
Oh, no, on Saturdays?
Saturday.
we can get the meeting room.
You can get the meeting room.
I'm going out on a limb that if the library's not open, the meeting room would probably be available, but I'll check on that.
Okay.
If
You know somebody with keys?
I've got one.
All right, so we'll get back to the location, but somewhere like that. I will make that motion to add that to the calendar.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilor Egan. Any discussion on that?
Just
Councilor Bradley?
Just a question. The purpose of this is to go through what our roles will be?
Our goals.
Our goals.
For the year, yeah.
What day did you say?
Saturday, the 28th?
20th.
All right, all in favor of adding that to the calendar?
Aye.
That's everybody. Thank you. The other two items on our other business list, we have a presentation by Suzanne Watson from Freeport Meeting House Arts. Did you have any introduction for this, or do we want to let Suzanne introduce herself? She was the liaison to the
No, I think part of, I guess, where this came from, to just provide a tidbit of context, is that over the past several years, Meeting House Arts has evolved in its structure and in its presence in the community and in its profile. And we have, on occasion, provided substantial support to the organization, and including under its previous incarnation. And I thought it would be a good idea for, and so did Meeting House Arts, to provide an update to the council on where that contribution, previous contributions have gone, and where the group is now, and where, most importantly, where it's heading. Without stealing too much thunder, they just completed a strategic plan. So I'm curious to hear more about that, and also just to give the rest of the council an update on this, in my opinion, fabulous organization that we have right on Main Street, which I think is a great location for it. So I'll introduce Suzanne Watson, the interim or acting director of Meeting House Arts.
Good evening. I certainly thought it will create quite the tension that we just heard, although it was quite educational. My name's Suzanne Watson. I'm the interim executive director for Meeting House Arts. I'm standing on my tiptoes. Meeting House Arts, formerly Arts and Council Alliance of Freeport, ACAF, now Meeting House Arts. We have a new logo, we have a new look and feel, we have a new sign, and I see Eric Smith is here, and we're going to have First Parish Church and Meeting House Arts. There's going to be a ribbon cutting and a new sign on Main Street here soon. And we have a new website about to be launched. Thank you, Len. And so we're moving forward pretty quickly. We do have a strategic plan, as John pointed out. I was not prepared to specifically talk about that tonight. I'm happy to answer questions or anything that anybody would like to know about that. It was completed, and we are on the path of what we're looking for the next 3 years as an organization. Meeting House Arts is located at 40 Main Street, which is the First Parish Church, a historic meeting house building where you all have, and the town has, invested a great deal of money to bring that building back to a level of health that we hope to maintain over the years ahead. It's also a magnificent meeting space, entertainment space, theater space, music space, educational space. We have been told on multiple occasions people come and record in this space because it's alive. And I think that's the neatest thing of all. It's alive. Chip knows. And so I'm going to read the mission statement that we have come up with. This is part of the strategic planning process that we went through, and I'm going to read it because I think it's important. It does tell what this organization is about. The mission of Meeting House Arts is to cultivate Greater Freeport as a vibrant center for arts and culture by fostering creative collaboration, expanding access to arts and cultural opportunities, amplifying the arts and culture as a powerful tool to economically strengthen, educate, and connect our community. So it's really also important, and as I think John alluded to as well, to look at the history, because it's quite a journey that's been taken by many of the people in this room right now, who deserve to be celebrated, I think, in terms of the effort and the work that has gone before me, certainly. And I think it's important you look back to see where this sort of began loosely in 2014, and it evolved through to an actual cultural plan that was created that really designated that Freeport needed a center for the arts, and we created a district, an arts district, which is Meeting House Arts sits in the very center of at this stage of the game. There was a website, newsletter, Facebook page. These were all sort of the preliminary early stage development for Meeting House. But then, looking for a space, the historic First Parish Church was actually a perfect venue for the center again. And again, as John pointed out, it's in the middle of Main Street. It's in the middle of town. And then we looked for an extensive period of time, found that space, spent a great deal of time and effort, money, in the middle of a pandemic, I'll remind you too, that to create the space. And now the space is behind us in a certain way. The great effort to restore this space is behind us. Now we spent about the last year in operational mode. And if you'll take the next slide. I actually wanted to do this is like a repeat of the just previous slide, but it actually shows you the demarcation between the effort to restore the building and the last year of operation. And I think it's really critical to know that the operation now is something we know, we've learned, we're still learning and will continue to learn, but we understand now what it means to operate this space for well over a year. Go ahead. So I think that one of the things that has come to our attention is the revisioning plan. And I wanted to focus a lot of attention on this tonight because I feel like that's kind of our direct next steps forward, is to really look at what the effort to do the revisioning plan has meant to Meeting House Arts. There are 3 specific goals, and I'm going to go through this. This is the first one that we've adopted and said this is what we will, consider our role in playing in the development of the revisioning process in town. And this one is support local arts, cultural program, festivals, and events in downtown. Next slide. And so I just want to point out in this last year, and this is really remarkable in my mind, we've had the Bates Film Festival at the Nordica Theater. We've had Our Town, which was a tremendous success for the town. I think it was a landmark opportunity. It was something we will talk about for years to come. And we had the Freeport Free Speech. This is also a tremendous, we had full houses for every one of these, even in the warmest weather. Next one. And so we also hosted 36 local and regional musical artists through this last year. That's in 1 year. So, and I could read them, but I did give you all handouts so you wouldn't have to read the small print. But you'll see there's quite a number of performances that have been just this last year. So next. We've also hosted a great deal of educational efforts, the opportunity to really use the space for kids and school. And, the one acts were all utilized the space to do rehearsals and to actually perform. We had, you can again read through here, but Freeport High School, the middle school, all of the schools used this space, and this was free. This was when they used the space without cost. So this is another part of the revisioning plan, is part of what we've envisioned the arts and culture being. It's something where it's a gathering place, an educational place, opportunity really to have a space where the town can utilize this for the right purposes. So next. These are by the numbers, and I know that Jake was, when I had a conversation with him a while back, said, give me the numbers. And so we are getting better at the numbers, but I think these numbers are pretty impressive anyway. 11 shows. These shows go for a month at a time. They're not a show and then gone. These are lengthy art gallery shows. And we had 320 local artists that have shown in that gallery. We have 120 actual members of this gallery, so they pay to have the coalescing opportunity for artists to get together, to have places to show their work, to sell their work, and to actually add to the economy. We ran workshops, community events in the gallery. That 227 is the hours that volunteers that contributed to shows and running the gallery, taking care of the day-to-day operations. Thousands and thousands of dollars in sales in the gallery. The stage numbers, we have 7,300, 7,400 or so stage attendees to our performances, over 1,800 stage performers, and almost 2,500 volunteer hours that were invested in this effort. Next. And going into 2024 and beyond, 2023 and 2024, these are the performances that we have already lined up. These are what are already on the books to be produced for the upcoming season. And this is all, now so far, really, what I've shown you, is all venue related. So this is not what I'm now about to move on to show you. This is what has actually happened in the venue itself. So go ahead. Because what we are now looking to, and last summer we did, I think, John, we had 4 performances last summer, 3. And it was on Zach Hour's flatbed trailer in Memorial Park, with the train going by and with all of the activity. But it was a precursor in my mind to the opportunity of what we can do in the summers and the outdoor performances to come. And I've got something later in the presentation here to talk about with that. But the idea that we will, it's fine. That we will be continuing on with the Memorial Park performances this summer, as well as taking on Winslow Park and looking at the new amphitheater in front of the town hall. So this is the second goal that we've been given through the revisioning process, which is to engage more public art, sculptures, murals, temporary installations, outdoor, I'm not sure that's right, outdoor instruments, but interactive installations. That's the goal. And then the project that kind of falls under that as the revisioning process has whittled this down is to support local arts programming, festivals, and events by building public infrastructure in existing public spaces. This is verbatim wording now from the revisioning plan. So next. The public art possibilities, we have had such a good time. You know, Evan has been doing a lot of work with this, others have, with how is it that we can think about public art in this town and looking at other towns around us, other towns and cities in other parts of the country. We have envisioned what we could actually do in this town that could constitute really positive public art opportunities. Is the bus stops, there are bike racks, there are crosswalks, there are murals. We can learn lessons from other people that have had some issues with that, but we can learn our lessons that way and make sure we do a good job with that. But I also want to point out that public art does not directly benefit Meeting House Arts. That's not an income producer. That is something we do because it is what is expected us out of the cultural plan, out of the revisioning plan, out of anything where you look at arts and culture as the value added to any community. But the imagination is here to be explored, I think, and thought about as we go forward. So moving on really quickly here, but the other sort of imagination opportunity is what has been talked about in various contexts, is whether a band shell or a gazebo or a performance space that's more formal performance space. And we've talked about Memorial Park as being the logical location for this, although there's some discussion about exploring other parks in town, the Leon Gorman Park. We can look at these other parks. We're not going to just land on Memorial Park and say that's it, but we're going to do some experimentation, I think, as we go forward. And the idea, too, we think about sometimes as these, and I think Adam Bliss is the one who came up with the word pavilion. But I really like the word pavilion because it gives some more space to the concept, more opportunity for thinking beyond just wood or steel or some sort of permanent structure, even to the point of fabric. We can think of any sort of imagination of where we go forward with this. So this is one of the revisioning efforts, again, under the infrastructure development for public art, that Meeting House Arts has accepted as our responsibility within the revisioning process. So next. So I'm now moving very quickly into some of our asks, if you will, the ask slides. And the big one right now, I think, is the local arts agency. It is something that has been done in other towns to designate Meeting House Arts as the Freeport Community Local Arts Agency. And again, if you look at your own handouts there, but it really is, the local arts agency is a private organization, or it can be an agency of the local government. Meeting House Arts is certainly a private entity, but working with the local government here. Promotes, supports, and develops the arts at the local level. It requires an official town declaration and recognition. I believe it could be as simple as a letter. It just states that Meeting House Arts is the local arts agency. We don't have to be the only one, but it can be designated as the local arts agency currently. We think we are the right organization to be designated, to gain that designation. We forged a partnership with the town of Freeport for nearly a decade now. We have part of the formation of the cultural plan, restored a historic meeting house building on Main Street to the benefit of the town, hosted a community calendar on a website, and by the way, the new website will have also opportunity for an expansion of that community calendar. We've held arts education events, workshops for artists of all ages. We've worked with many organizations to create town-wide events like the Bates Film Festival, as we've talked about before, in our town. We've officially taken on the role as the official arts agency and within the arts district in town. So what's the importance of that designation? It is to allow us to use that designation for greater credibility, not only here but in the outside world as well. We can then also apply specifically for grants that are related to grants and support that are related to that designation. Next. So this is the next to last slide, but this is the one where we talk about funding, and it really is, this has been something that's very hard for me to figure out, and I've thought, and I've talked to a lot of people. What does this mean? And I can understand how the idea of a sort of a line item in the budget is hard to sell. It's a hard thing to talk about, but I think ultimately that is, and not this year necessarily, but that is where we'll have to go. I think as a town, as a community, to really and truly support an organization like this, we cannot do all we need to do and must do with the revenue certainly that comes from the performances in the venue itself. We can look at multiple ways to raise money, and we certainly have and are and will. But again, I'm not asking for that at this stage of the game. I'm going to stick with the revisioning plan. And I gave you each one a proposed idea around the pavilion. And the pavilion would be where we would start, at least. I would also hope that as the revisioning plan continues to be worked on and discussed, and we think about these three specific goals and projects that fall underneath those goals, that we are part of an ongoing discussion as those things are thought about. But for now, I'm going to stick to this pavilion and say, I feel like we can exercise exactly, and we've talked with Adam Bliss, the town engineer. We've talked with Councilor Pilch, who is the heading up this particular project. And we're thinking about, well, there's a process we can go through, something where we have a temporary platform this coming summer. We decide whether or not that's the right park, the right physical location. Then within the park itself, where's the right physical location for something larger like this pavilion we're talking about. And we actually have some surveys and some input from citizens in town as to whether or not this is a good experience. And if there are noise issues, noise complaints and such, we'll work on that. But anyway, I did give you all a proposed amount of money, which is essentially $14,400, which includes a full process of figuring out how we locate that pavilion, how we then get architectural drawings, maybe multiple drawings. I think of the Portland Museum of Art and the contest that they went on, or the selection process they went through. That could be a fun thing for us to do. We could have a competition among architects, right? We have a lot of architects right here in town. There are multiple ways to go about this, but I'm proposing something as a start because I really feel I've grown to be committed, and I think the organization's grown to understand the importance of this revisioning plan, and we'd like to play our role. And I'm going to stop there and answer questions.
Thanks, Suzanne. At least individually for me, I just want to, again, say thank you for highlighting, I think, which is one of the goals that I had several years ago, 5, 6 years ago, which is that Meeting House Arts and all of the activity, and it's a big wagon that you're pulling behind you, lines up perfectly well with all of the conversations that we're having in our downtown revisioning. And so, in so many cases where municipal budgets are fraught with what to spend money on, it's really fabulous to see that our community and our council right here have supported art as an absolutely integral piece of keeping our downtown vital for our local residents. And that was a fabulous presentation to reiterate that point. So thank you very much.
Thank
you.
Can I just ask one clarification? You talked about a new logo, a new website, a new look and feel. Do you also have a new staff member to introduce?
Dan, you're such a human. Delaney Woodward. This is her very first day as our... Delaney was chosen after a very exhaustive search. Trust me, it's true. People keep talking about not having staff people. We had 10 people apply for this position, and quite a number of good people. But Delaney is coming on board with a great deal. She's a great singer. We haven't heard her yet, but she's a great singer.
Delaney.
And works as a co-producer at the Maine Public.
Oh.
She did the governor's inauguration last week. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, sure. Welcome, Delaney. How's Bradley?
Yeah, Suzanne, a great presentation. And I mean, from beginning to end. What I want to be sure of is that your needs, financial needs, get considered in the process for the revisioning that Dan and the team are going to put together. And I'm not sure, I guess you'd like to have you explain to me how the Meeting House Arts Charter project title page fits into what you're going to put into the queue that Dan and the group and the rest of us will put together to bring ultimately to the council for funding in this year. So that sometimes people don't truly understand how that process is going to work, and I just want to make sure tonight is a chance for Dan to tell you how to do it so that it does work.
That's a great question, really good question, because I have to say I was a little confused about this whole process, and I didn't really quite understand what I heard different numbers, 80, 121 different recommendations out of the principal group, and I started to dig in a little deeper, and then I thought there were the 3 goals that we could have defined that were Meeting House Arts related. I got that. And then I started to talk to Dan and to Adam and to other Caroline, who's on the committee, and I started to ask. But really, it was attending some of the meetings. And in one meeting, they brought up this charter. This is it. And I said, oh, that looks like a management tool. That looks like something that's a management tool. I get that. And so so this one piece of paper defines this particular project, and I can handle that. So I started talking and saying, okay. And it defines, and it's totally negotiable. I can come back and negotiate this. That was the beautiful part. I felt like I was a contributor, but I was also getting what I needed back. So thank you for asking the question. I think it's still pretty muddy and difficult for most people to understand.
So having been...
Great answer.
Yeah. I just want to be sure, because I've been in your position with respect to a couple other projects, and I've had to sort of work my way through what I think the process wants out of the project team so that it ends up in the queue. And this piece of paper here doesn't have the detail, for instance, the sewer would have. But could you comment on how she might add to this or augment it so that it will fit into the prioritization process you envision?
Yeah, so I'll tail on to what Suzanne said. The piece of paper that she's holding, which is different than the piece of paper that's in front of you, is a description of the project. The project being the one that she quoted in her presentation about
The infrastructure.
supporting local arts by building public infrastructure in existing public spaces. So that was one of the specific projects that was in our vision plan that our larger group adopted and said, yeah, we think this is important, we want to move forward with it. And we started building a charter, which we did collaboratively. So it wasn't, here's, the charter that we are delivering from on high, you can accept it or reject it, but rather, let's sit down and say, what should be in this charter? Who are the stakeholders? Who's helping with the project? I'm trying to remember what else is on that piece of paper. What are the goals of the project? How will we know if it was a success? How much money is involved now? How much money is involved in the future? So all of that is part of that piece of paper, which you're going to see in 3 weeks on the 7th. You'll see 12 or 13 of those pieces of paper, the one that she's holding there. And that has all the rest of the details. And that's where Suzanne and the rest of us kind of negotiate, hey, you think it's $13,400? What if we do this and what if we do that? What's the right number to put on the charter?
Okay, but I heard Suzanne.
No, excuse me, Ed, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go, you go.
What I put in front of you, that piece of paper, is my paper. I created that out of taking the 3 bullets that were here, and I took those 3 bullets, and I said, all right, I'm going to put dollar numbers to that, to those, and that was purely my adventure or exploration as to what it might mean.
But the paper I have in front of me has essentially 3 phases to it, right? One is the LLA, the being designated. That's no money next to that. That's a council declaration. Does that have a charter piece too?
Nope.
Should it?
I don't think it needs to.
Will it get in the queue if it doesn't?
The local arts designation?
Yes.
I don't think it needs to be in the downtown vision queue. That's just something we say, yeah, it's a good idea. We write a letter, we sign it.
Okay, so that's different than the charter process. Okay. Then at the bottom, there's also a Royal River estimate for air conditioning heat pumps. And that I happen to know a lot about just because I had to work through the venue last summer with Freeport Speech and other things, the concert we did for Jane. And does that have a charter document as well?
And I haven't even mentioned that either as part of this presentation. It is embedded in that presentation, but, I mean, air conditioning is, having now operated that building for a year, realizing the summers are brutal and they're not going to get any easier. So we really are going to go without revenue from that space for 3 to 4 months every year.
So one of your recommendations to the council is to find a way to help you air condition this space for the 4 months that it's uninhabitable. And if that's true, I mean, in other words, that's what they want, that ought to be in a charter document as well.
No, everything needs to make it into a charter. Or we would get an awful lot of charters if everything became a charter, right?
I'm not sure what you're saying to me.
I'm saying, no, I don't think that belongs in a charter.
Why?
I think that's an important question that we need to, that Meeting House Arts needs to discuss and figure out, and if the council needs to play a role in that. You have a lot of people that would certainly sit down and talk it through with you. I don't know that the Downtown Vision Charter place is the right place to start with that.
I would argue that it's exactly the place to start that conversation because it's part of what Meeting House Arts needs to carry out the promise that the council has invested into this point. Now, people may disagree with me, I understand that. But if Meeting House doesn't put that into a charter, it won't come up in the conversation about prioritization or funding in this cycle.
It won't come up in the Downtown Vision part.
That's right. And you meant this, as I understand. I hate to be. This is the part of this process that's unknowable to those of us who aren't you and the small committee. And I'm trying to make sure that Meeting House, who's come here in good faith, with things they've identified at their board meeting, this is one of the things you've identified as a priority for Meeting House. Whether you get it or not, who knows? I mean, there's going to be a lot of other people competing for this money. But if it's on the table, you should put it on the table. It's the only way it's going to get on the table is if you fill out a charter, just like the one you did for the pavilion, and put it in the queue. Now, you can throw it out if you want, because you're the king, and I'm teasing you.
Other year that, up until now, until we started Downtown Visioning, when something like this came up, if there's an ask of the town to provide funding, they'd write a letter to Peter or Jessica saying, here's an ask, we'd like to be included in next year's capital plan or operating plan. That process still exists.
Fair enough.
But in addition to that process, we now also have this downtown thing, which is very focused on these 12 projects that we're trying to get off.
And I think
And one of the 12 projects is you set up Meeting House Arts to be, and it's in your revisioning plan. They are the agency for the arts to do all the things you wanted them to do. One of the things they want to do is to promote public arts in the downtown during the summer months. In order to do that, they need air conditioning. They ought to tell you that. That's their process. What you do with it's another. I respect everything you're doing, please. I do, but I think if they don't say it and put it on the table, it won't come up. What we'll get is a pavilion. Nothing wrong with that, but I doubt that. I'm sure I shouldn't say this. I have no idea whether that's your highest priority or it's not. It's one of them, but I know, just having been through the air conditioning issue, that if you shut that place down in the summer because it's so hot, you've lost a third of the most active time this downtown has to take advantage of everything you've already invested in. I'll be making these arguments later, obviously, but I think get it on I'm asking, nod or not, get this in the queue so that this discussion can happen when the priorities are set.
This is what I started to say earlier is my naivete, my newness. You can write it off to what you want, but I really struggled with the budget process and how to go about this, because it's clear that the revisioning plan is important, and it's important for us to play our role. So it's sort of like we're gonna figure this out as we go along, but I don't want to keep coming back and saying we have this and we have that and we have whatever. I'm just trying to be consistent and predictable as we go through this process. The air conditioning, Ed, you're absolutely right. It's paramount for us right now because of the situation with, and that is one of two estimates that we've gotten so far. We have a third we're waiting for, and then we're going to sit down and figure out what our best path forward is. But it is a critical need.
Darryl, sorry.
I have a question that don't need to be answered tonight, but maybe in the future you can answer. You are a private organization. Now we're taking municipal funding. I see a gray area here, and I need some clarification down the road, not tonight. Thank you.
Could I suggest that something to you, perhaps? I do understand that argument, and I appreciate your bringing it forward, because it's an important conversation to have. Absolutely true. But I think if you look at what public service we are performing, look at the numbers, look at what has happened here. We're not operating like a normal, like a for-profit entity that's really operating on our own interest entirely. We're operating with the idea we are part of this community. We're part of the value. We bring value. We bring an arts and cultural aspect that I don't think there's any need to make the argument that that has an economic value.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I can also have the same other argument for other nonprofits with the same argument when we're sitting up here looking at those revenues. So that's to be honest and forthright. That's where we're coming from. So
I'm a private business person too, so I totally get that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Suzanne? Oh, sorry.
Just to clarify the budget process and the capital budget process here, thank you, Counselor. What I'm expecting, so I'm looking at your project sheets, right? And those sheets are going to be the prioritization of the committee that's working on this, the Downtown Visioning Prioritization Group, that are then going to be brought in front of the town council for town council saying, yep, these are our priorities in the next year of what we want to do. That happens before we do the capital budget. Most of those, not all of them, they're either going to be capital or operating budget requests in all 12 or 10 of the 12 or most of them. And then those come to me and Jessica, and we look at them and say, yep, these are probably going to go in the capital program or in the operating budget because the council's already said their priorities. There may be a reason one of them doesn't get in there. We may come back, talk with you. You guys may take it out after it goes in there, but it's likely that what the majority of the council votes on for the priorities of the downtown plan will get into the budget process at the start. Suzanne has done great. Thank you so much. You came in, you talked to me. You said, yep, we have a funding request for a budgetary funding request. We talked about different options, how that could happen, get ahead of the curve. So I know that that's out there too. That could be completely separate from the downtown vision plan. Maybe the council, that prioritization group wants to put that in as the item. Maybe they don't. Either way, we can have those conversations at the council level. And that's been lacking, we've had a lot of discussions before where there's always been somewhere in the budget process a discussion about Meeting House, but only I think 2 out of the last 5 years we got them like in January, which I love. So like I can talk with the council, we can figure out what we're prioritizing. So thank you. At least regardless of whether you want to support it or not, I totally, that's a political decision that's been made up here. At least we've got already had the communications going that, yep, we're going to make a request. We know to put a placeholder to wait for the council discussion on it to see how that goes. And so I'm comfortable that we have them integrated somewhat into the budget process, that you're not going to be left behind. We're already have those conversations. So
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. Could I give you 2 more little pieces of fun information? We have now included, through a process which Councilor Egan took part in, we put a high school student, Logan Schultz, on our board as a voting board member, as the liaison with the youth and the educational aspects of the town. And I have one idea. I've talked with Adam Bliss about this, and I think with Dan as well, but we want to have the first bite at the apple for the amphitheater and the town hall amphitheater on the 4th of July. I'd like to make the offer that Meeting House Arts would like to hold a Dixieland band concert there on the 4th of July.
Sounds like fun.
Can you vote on that now?
I'd rather kick it down the road.
Should we, or is there will on the council to vote on the local arts agency portion right now? Could we just make a motion to do that, and then we can sign a declaration at another point? Or?
I had a question for Suzanne about it, but I'm not opposed to it.
do you know what that has to say right now?
Which is sort of along the lines of my question. We started an email that I think we're sort of in the middle of. After we had talked, I just sort of Googled what is a local arts agency. And when I came back, what I saw, and there may be more to it, but what I saw was a list that I think organizations signed themselves up for and say, I want to be a local arts agency. And there were 2 already in Freeport, one of which was Meeting House Arts. So is that all you need? Do you need a letter of support saying, we're glad you are one, and we support the fact that you are one? I don't know that we designate you. It seems like you designate yourself, and we just support it.
What?
Why are you shaking your head no?
Oh, because we haven't been designated by the town as registered us as that online. It doesn't, it's not related to you declaring us the local art agency.
You might have been back when there were grant applications put in for the original plan. It's floating around back here that we did some type of an official designation based on because it would give you guys preference, or the group at that time, which was ACAF, give them preference or better treatment with the Arts Commission at the state. I forget the exact group, so.
I wasn't aware of that.
You might have been.
Do you want to just say that we support it, and if we need to do something, that
just put it on the next agenda?
What is it actually? What does the LAA do? I mean, what is the?
There are actually grant opportunities that are specific to that designation.
Okay, but I mean, what is?
It is also something we put in our strategic plan. We put in, it's a credibility factor, if you will, when it's the local arts agency for the community.
Okay, so I'm an artist and I come to you. What do you do? Or is it not that? I mean, what is a local art agency do?
There's actually part of the slide I gave you has the whole list
of what it does.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll have to look that up. So.
Can you bring that?
Yeah, Daryl.
So if I understand it right, we could designate them tonight, and if another group wanted to come forward, we could have multiple designations. So I don't think we're putting ourselves in any particular position. I just think we ought to move on it tonight and get it done.
I think that's the case. I don't know. But yeah.
It is not exclusive. You can have another arts agency in town.
I'm just curious. This is the first time I've heard.
You said you found that somewhere.
Yes. Well, I was a neophyte too, so I did some research. Dan's question was actually helpful because he said, I thought you already were. And I looked and I said, no, that looks like somebody just did a drop down and check off. It's not something that was official. And so the official comes when you say, yes, you are, and here's the letter to say that.
Okay. We might have
Thanks, John.
done that. I'll do a little bit of research. I know the former FEDC executive director, about 4 years ago, Mary, probably right before you were on the board, it's probably just right outside that time limit. We were asked to do something that would give you priority for a grant. It was to write the plan. Is that ringing a bell? 4 years maybe or so ago?
Yeah, but that was under, wasn't that
The
under?
other name.
ACAF. Oh,
It won't hurt, right?
How about we look
No.
into it and we come back, if we need to take action, we'll come back and take action on the next meeting? Or,
we'll get it on.
it sounds like we don't know exactly what we need to do, that's my concern.
Okay.
I was going to make a recommendation, we both make a motion that we authorize the town manager to exercise the, whatever agreement is, if it needs to be done. And if it doesn't, we're all set.
I'll second that.
Thank you, councilors. Is there somebody on Zoom that has their hand up?
Tom Saliba is on Zoom and has his hand up.
Tom Saliba, would you like to comment?
I think he does because he's got his hand up. Hold on one
Okay,
minute.
Tom, I think we'll be able to hear you if you go ahead.
I think you need me to turn the puck on though.
Maybe.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm actually speaking, I'm the president of Freeport Speech, and here to speak on behalf of not only what Suzanne talked about and the designation, but also what Councilor Bradley brought up. Freeport Speech grew out of, but is totally independent from Meeting House Arts. We are also a 501c3 organization, and we're not asking to be the local arts organization. We're not asking for that at all. Freeport Speech really defines what happens when you have a Meeting House Arts. I define Meeting House Arts as a magnet and a multiplier. What do I mean by that? Freeport Speech had 6 events in its first year. We donate the net proceeds from our events, which last year was over $32,000, to local other 501c3s. 2 of them that benefited them the most last year were both Meeting House Arts itself and also Freeport Community Services. Our 6 events were all sold out. The first few were restricted in size because of COVID, but by the end, we were packing the house with 200 people. We actually ran 2 of the 6 were free, the public, so that we were not financially preventing anyone from attending our events. And in fact, I've always, even for the ticketed events, we would offer free tickets to the Freeport school systems and to others. We almost had a disaster, and this goes to Councilor Bradley's comment. We ran an event in July, and it was about Ukraine, and we had the Deputy Supreme Allied Commander of NATO and a 28-year veteran from the State Department speaking from both the perspective of the Pentagon and the State Department on what happened in Ukraine, how did we get there, and what was potentially going to happen. It was about 97 degrees inside the building that particular night. And my greatest fear was that someone was going to faint, collapse, and in the middle of a lecture, we'd have rescue people there taking people out on stretchers. After that evening, we made a decision that we would not be able to hold any more of our events at Meeting House Arts until at least September because of the fear of what was going to happen. And so I think the point that Councilor Bradley brought up is really critically important. And I don't know if it's going to be addressed tonight or how you address it, but because of our success, we started looking at other venues. We figured we probably, because of demand, needed a 200-seat venue, Meeting House Arts, a 400-seat, a 600-seat, and even an 800-seat venue. Then we thought about ourselves and said, no, we really want to stay small and intimate, but I hope we're not going to be forced into going someplace else, whether in Freeport or in other towns, to hold our events. That wasn't our initial purpose. We already have 3 committed events for this next year and about 3 or 4 others. And I can only tell you, if you look at our website, freeportspeech.org, in the next couple of weeks, it'll be announced. These are world-class lectures. We could easily sell 600-800 tickets to these events. So kindly give Meeting House Arts all of your support. It's a magnet because it draws people like us, and it's a multiplier because in turn, we are giving a lot of money back into the local charities as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. So, yeah, thank you for your presentation and for all the information to Tom as well. We've been looking up local arts agencies and things like that, but it sounds like we have a motion on the floor. I don't recall that we voted on it, but why don't we?
We didn't vote it yet.
We did?
We
Or
didn't vote.
We have a motion to designate, I got flashed.
Oh,
I didn't think it was going to be me that would be the first one to get flashed for not turning his mic on. But,
you the first one all night?
Yeah.
Are you the first one all night?
All right, so unless there's further discussion, who supports designating Meeting House Arts as a local arts or agency on behalf of the town of Freeport? I think that's everybody. So thank you.
Okay.
All right, done deal. We'll make it happen.
Got a hand over there.
Ms. Davis, do you want to grab a? Or grab a microphone?
It's left me now.
Somebody has a microphone somewhere.
Chris has it.
Okay, it's me again. I just want to say thank you. Suzanne has brought in a breath of fresh air into Meeting House that is just exciting, it's inclusive, she's thinking outside the box, and I think you all are going to kick behind in the next year. I'm so excited. So I know it's monies that Freeport has, but damn, go to one of those performances when it's hot. I mean, it keeps people like me out of there, so please. Anyway, great job. You've really done a wonderful job, and it is about economic development in Freeport. It is about the downtown vision and goals. It is what we said we needed, and thank you for all the efforts you as a council put into it 5 years ago to get it funded in the first place, and now all the work that you're doing. It's marvelous. Okay, I'm leaving.
Thank you, Mary. Takes a village, takes a town.
Downtown.
All right, we have one more item to vote on tonight, and then we have an executive session. But the item to vote on is regarding dispatch and animal control contracts, which the
To discuss, I don't
manager is going to. Oh no, we're not going to vote.
Don't
on
even
it,
need a
I'm sorry.
vote, but we'll
Just
have a
discuss.
vote along with everything else on
I
the.
don't know why everyone doesn't want to stick around and hear about animal control contracts, but I think it's fascinating.
Give it 30 seconds.
Yeah. All right, so we've got our discussion up here about contracts, which Peter's going to lead us through regarding animal control and dispatch. So as you exit and have your conversations in the hallway, can you keep in mind that the hallway is rather echoey in the hallway? So if you could keep your conversations down.
They're not listening.
They're not listening.
That was a good attempt.
There was,
I could use the gavel.
We need a bailiff.
what do they say? There was an attempt.
It wasn't, yes. Yes, there we go. All right, Peter.
All right.
Floor is yours.
This one is a continuation of our two existing levels of service, this item. So it is not a new proposal, but there are some new, not very many new details in it at all. So currently the police, I should say all of our public safety agencies. Okay. Sorry, I thought I'd wanted to ask a question, but I guess not. Question?
No, not
Oh,
yet.
you looked, sorry, you looked at me like I thought you were going to ask a question there. So our public safety agencies are currently dispatched by the town of Brunswick in the long history. There's members up here that could provide more details on that history if you desire. Before I was working for the town of Freeport, Freeport ran its own dispatch center. The decision was made to stop doing that many years ago, or at least 15 roughly years ago. The town at the time looked around, chose the town of Brunswick, combined the services. There was a push, there has always been a push, but there was a strong push at the time to regionalize services. So that was the result. That happened much longer ago than the animal control contract, which was very new. It was, I believe it was in the past 4 years or 3 years. The dispatch service has had great times, it's had bad times, or rougher times. We are in a very good time, I think, right now. There's a good level of communication. The staff that's over there, I've been a part of a couple meetings where there have been back and forth. The police department staff is very willing to listen to our current fire and police directors and take their suggestions and do what's requested of them. So, that has not always been the case, but for the past 3 or 4 years, I've got nothing but great feedback. And yep, there are issues. Sometimes things comes up, but everybody is willing to work together and try to resolve the issue. The animal control service, which is a shared position. So the dispatch service is essentially we're a customer. It's an interlocal agreement. The animal control service, we actually share that position. They hired the person. At the same time, we went in about 3/4, 1/4 split on that position so that we would both utilize a single employee. Before that, the clam warden, before there was a marine resource officer, was our animal control officer. So this gave both towns the ability to hire someone who is an animal control specialist, and that's all that she does, and trained in straight animal control issues. That's everything from livestock, mostly dogs, domestic animals, things like that. We've gotten nothing but fantastic reviews of that program from our police department. It's primarily a police-to-police service. So the significant change here in this year is that animal control has been renewed on a year-to-year basis. Brunswick asked to move that into a 5-year cycle similar to the dispatch contract so that they would be up at the same time. We are currently in year 6 or year 1, depending how you want to look at it, of the dispatch service, in year 2 or year 1 of the 5-year animal control service. Neither town noticed that they had both expired. Both of our finance departments brought it to us and said, hey, we need to renew these. So Brunswick had agreed at the time. We budgeted the standard 3% increase that was in both of those contracts. Brunswick's like, yep, not a problem. Should have been talking about that back in January. If we wanted you to increase the rates from 3%, they were great. They didn't have any need to do that, but they always work with us. They could have strong-armed some additional money in there, and given the budget year, it absolutely would have been justified. So in the renewal contract, the 3% increase is for the current year that we already budgeted 3% for, but it would be done under contract. There is an 11% increase proposed in next year, which the genesis for that is that they spent way more than 3% 2 fiscal years ago in the past fiscal year in terms of raises and salaries for the employees, especially in the dispatch sector. We compared, so both of those seemed reasonable. It would then go down for the future years going forward. We didn't want to give, one of the options we talked about was doing like 5% or 6, 4, or something like that. We didn't want to give the impression that it was always going to be a higher rate, so I preferred it to be one adjustment and then back down to 4. So when we talk about this 4 years from now, we will be of the assumption that standard kind of inflationary increase is what we all hope, and Brunswick is in agreement on that, that their they're viewing that as a one-time, kind of backwards-looking adjustment for the cost that they incurred when they were under contract to us for a lower rate. So, that being said, we did look at some alternatives. The biggest one around here that had capacity in terms of providing dispatch is Cumberland County, and I think we looked at them 15 years ago or whenever that change was done. The cost is significantly more even after the increases proposed within the agreement with Brunswick. So the county started this year at $208,000. That's a formula. It's based per capita. They do zero variance from that for all the communities that they dispatch for. The downside to using the county also is that there would be a complete changeover of software required. They run on a different operating system for their dispatch services. So we need to do some capital upgrades and also deal with grumbles from our people for a year as they, everything that they had done for 15 years now didn't work on the new software or whatever. I don't want to give the impression that that's impossible. It just would be a higher upfront cost and kind of a higher cost going forward. If there was some reason to do that, we certainly wouldn't be opposed to it, but we're pretty happy with the service from Brunswick at this point in time. Our departments are also. The other concern that we have is the staffing level at the county because they've had trouble holding. They've been, I don't know how to put this, seriously understaffed in the dispatch department. By their own admission, it's a difficult position to fill. Brunswick is not facing those staffing shortfalls, so I'm a lot more confident that, we participate with them. We do the kind of hiring, a little bit of consultation on the hires and things like that, probably what's appropriate for footing a fifth of the cost. They let us have input and they let us pick up the phone and call whenever there are issues. So that's my
We got
5 minutes, I guess. Get questions, yep.
Mr. O'Darrow?
Three things maybe. Under C, page 1, it says police chief does the hiring. You need to add either the fire chief or another proposal, 2 completely dispatch requirements. PD does it one way, fire does it the other, so I think we need equal representation. We used to have it, I don't know where it went. So if that could be added, I'd like to see that.
You mean into the agreement for dispatch services that we're looking at right here?
Yep, under C.
Yep.
And then, what I haven't, I think a little better, but we had some really rough roads over there. So where is our get out clause in this contract? I don't see one.
It's an interlocal agreement. You're committing to do 5 years with them. So we could, by mutual agreement, get out of it, but we haven't been able to get out of an interlocal agreement for the past, since we started with them.
So I think we ought to have that option if it goes, just because they're doing a great job now. 5 years is a long time. And boy, you could have
Yeah, so like a service level agreement that says if you're not providing this, we're out.
something we have an opportunity, because I'm kind of uncomfortable locking us in for 5 years if the service goes to crap. And I thought we had many years ago, maybe before you, Peter, when we did one over, we had I think we had a 60-day notification where if we were going to terminate or whatever. But we ought to have something that protects us if they don't deliver the service that's needed, that's all. So if that wasn't added, I'd vote against it, because I think that's that important.
Yeah, I don't think, at least what I believe that this is the same contract as last year or 5 years ago with some changes in cost. I don't think there's, I'll do a word comparison of the two of them, but
Well, it says we can terminate for cause by giving 6 months' notice, right? Yeah, no, but I mean, it's better than not having any out clause.
Did you want to add anything, John? Well,
I just wanted to ask, I mean, we rely on the technology to support this, and I just wanted to ask, have there been any glitches in the technology in the past 3 or 4 years? And if so, how many? Roughly?
on whose?
Well, on the front cover, it says, Chief Conley, Chief Goodman, and you unanimously support that, and in my going into my 7th year on the council, that is entirely what I have heard, is that both chief and fire, both police and fire chiefs are thoroughly satisfied with the arrangement that we have. So I have no reason to think it's different, but I know that we rely on technology in terms of connection and dispatch information coming back to us. Has there been any, my question is, have there been any glitches? And if so, do we know how many there might have been, or is that an issue at all? Maybe that's just not an issue.
I don't want to say no, so I'm sure there's been a handful. I do want to say that they've provided some IT support to us from the people in Brunswick for communications issues, even when they weren't their fault, at no cost to the town. So maybe we shouldn't say that too loud, but I'll say it here to the council. I think that they have provided, I won't say that they were their responsibility to do it, but I think they've tried to assist, like when we've had, for example, a software issue, or there's a problem with our server. So one thing that comes to mind, so I don't want to say there are no glitches, because like when we had that data breach issue, the potential data breach and partial data breach that happened 2 years ago, whenever it was, I mean, that was completely on our end. We locked everything down, and they were hand in hand, because we were connected. Like, our networks had connections to each other, and they were concerned, we were concerned. They spent all the time during that process making sure that everything was good here before, you know, putting it back together. And I don't think they had any obligation to do that. They could be like, have your IT people tell us when it's good to go. But they were so concerned about both us and their systems not getting corrupted that I mean, there's no line. If something needs to get done emergency, their IT people come here. And if it's our responsibility, we call our IT people and they come in and they deal with it. But in the emergency situation, there's no line like, yep, call us when your IT gets there and they can take care of it. I mean, they help with what they can do at the time. Nothing's perfect. There were obviously issues. Go ahead, Counselor.
I think, to your question, John, we just invested in a digital system, which now all of our four towers are generator backup, which we didn't have before. That was a major leak we had here for quite a few years. That's been fixed. Thank you, Peter, and the staff of, finally getting that done.
3 of the sites are generator backup, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
There was
so
zero
that was
before.
one of the bigger problems. It used to be, in the good old days, when the power went out, I would send a firefighter with a portable generator to the water tower up here, and we'd plug it in and did it manually, and then go up and refuel it every 3 hours. That's been fixed. So we've made some major strides for that. So I think that's, and they've always been supported, like you said, Peter. So I'm comfortable that they have met their obligation on that.
And the termination is a 6-month termination in here as we look through it. I mean, that's substantial. That's half a year. So it's like we should look at it as for the entire fiscal year. I mean, we're in a contract with them. It's long-term. It's an interlocal agreement, but that also gives us the kind of the stability that they're also, I mean, we have the long-term issue, but it also gives us the stability of they're not going to like, hey, you're on your own. I mean, I would assume that if we want to write in a 30-day or 60-day termination, they're probably going to want something reciprocal, which doesn't mean we couldn't do that, but it would be a scramble and nothing would be working right for 2 months or 3 months. I mean,
The 6 months is at our option, by the way.
Correct.
It's not at their option.
Yeah, so that's fine. I mean, it's an out, and you don't want to do something.
No, I think the
Right
6
away.
months is fine, but maybe it should go the other way, too.
but I will address the other.
We don't want it.
We don't have to deal with ramping up a dispatch effort in less than 6 months.
Wow, yeah.
I will address the other one about the hiring.
Adding in the fire chief
Yeah.
in addition to the police chief.
Yep.
Fire chief is designee, whatever, yeah.
My only question is about the later years, if inflation is 0 or negative, are we still committing to a 4% increase?
We are. We committed to 3 before, so we did 5 years of 3.
So why are we going to 4 and not keeping 3?
Because they feel, we had a lot of conversation about that. There was a certain percentage, the best way to describe it, I think there was a certain percentage that Brunswick fell behind, in their opinion, which I think is reasonable. The number that I heard was 20%, that their costs went up that much above what we had, or they anticipate those costs to go up above if we were just at our current rate for 5 years. So they want to make that.
The 11% isn't a full catch-up. That
They
gets
want to make
most of
that,
the way there.
well, they want to make that over the life of the contract.
Got it.
So, I mean, we could do 14% in 3
Got it.
if we
I
want
thought the
to.
11 was the full cast. That's, you answered my
Close.
question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where's the 6 months
I don't know, I found it somewhere else.
Where does the 6 months come from?
Section 4, effective date and term. My page numbers are all messed up, so I can't tell you.
Yeah, I think that these are scrambled by the copier there. They might have been out of order.
Section 3K has got an early termination of 30 days.
There's 2 agreements, one for animal control, one for
Oh, that's the ACO
yeah,
agreement.
and I think the pages are a little bit out of order too.
There you go. So we're subject to 30 days in the dog catcher. Jake and I will take over that.
My new foster's coming soon, I think. I just got my old one, so.
So what do you need from us tonight, Peter? You just need a thumbs up that, yeah, go ahead.
This will go on your agenda. I wanted to
Go on the
know,
agenda
I
for
wanted,
next
yep, for next week, for next meeting. I just wanted to
Do this
know,
again in the next meeting?
what's that?
We're going to do this again next meeting?
Vote for it, unless you want to make a motion off the printed agenda to accept these tonight, but I think I got one request to make a change, so I will go back and say, hey, they're not going to have any problem putting that in there. I'm
2-minute
assuming
item
so.
next time.
Well, that's the concern. I had thought that there may be other requests for changes, wanted to listen to what everyone had to say, didn't want to say, hey, here's a negotiated agreement that you had no part in, please adopt it, and after looking at it for 10 minutes and asking me questions, that usually
Doesn't go well.
doesn't work out very well, so no.
Yep. All right. So we've got an executive session for real estate. Thank you, Peter, for all the work on that. So let's vote to get into executive session, then we can take a couple minute
We're
break
going to an executive session to discuss the real estate matter.
pursuant to.
Mike,
Hold on, his mic's not on.
Mike's not on.
All right.
Mike,
Lights didn't go on.
All right, here, Ed, if you're going to make the motion, you want to do that?
To consider action relative to an executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056C pertaining to a real estate matter. I move we do it.
Is there a second?
second.
Counselor Pillsbury?
Aye.
Counselor Fournier?
Yes.
Counselor Lawrence?
Yes.
Counselor Daniele?
Yes.
Counselor Bradley?
Yes.
Counselor Egan?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, we're in executive session. Yeah. This is it for tonight.